This podcast contains explicit content and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Don't say we didn't warn you. Hello, knockers. It's Hannah.
I'm Madison.
And you're listening to Who's Knocking?
A true crime podcast.
That's us. So before we get into today's episode, we had a little update to one of our previous episodes that we wanted to talk about.
Yes.
So I was browsing on Reddit, and do you remember that terrifying photograph you showed me from the Israel Keys case?
I do recall.
What was the content of that photo?
That was a photo of Samantha Koenig
Yep.
after she had been murdered by Israel Keys, and he had, well, to go into it, he had raped and murdered her. He had then left her in a shed to be frozen for a week. Then
In the Alaskan winter. I think it was 2 weeks or 1 week?
Yeah, 1 or 2 weeks, maybe two. Then he came back. He thawed her out.
Disgusting.
Then he raped her dead corpse.
Ew.
And then he went out and got some makeup and he made up her face and did her hair and sewed her eyelids open. And then he took a photo of her in front or behind a current newspaper.
And then Madison
prove
showed
she
me the
was
photo,
alive.
and it was terrifying. But according to my Reddit research, apparently that photo is a fake photo. The one on the internet that everyone has seen, everyone has been terrified by, it's not even her.
Yeah, and it actually makes sense because it doesn't look like her.
Right.
And it makes, like, you know, looking at, I was like, okay, well, she's dead and, like, had, like, all that horrible stuff happen to her, so I bet that's the reason why. But yeah, it seems like it was a photo from a documentary, possibly.
Yeah.
And we don't have, like, solid evidence, but this seems to be the Reddit consensus.
Yeah. And it's like basically the photo does exist, but it was never released to the public.
Yeah.
And the photo that we've all seen, all of us true crime people, it's a lie. That's not really her,
Which I think is good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think if I was her family, I don't think I'd want that photo out there.
Yeah, it's kind of fair.
So fair enough. Makes it less scary.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I'll actually go back and like look at the photo because I kind of looked at it and then I was like, no.
No,
I don't want to
I've
look
like
at this.
really looked at that photo, and it's still creepy as hell. Like, they did a good job at like making it look super creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy.
But yeah, missed that one. Sorry.
So anyways, yeah. But that's what's out there. Like a lot of people have talked about that photo that I'm assuming it's the same exact one. So
Yeah. But I mean, most people, like, I've listened to a couple podcasts where they talked about the photo, but they don't show like, we didn't show the photo. It's like, I don't know. That's a lot to like show people.
Right.
So it is like, you know, it doesn't change anything about the story or anything, but it's, if you look up the photo, that's not the photo.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting amendment to the case because that seems to be like agreed upon. That photo is like a key highlight in that case. That's something a lot of people talk about. But anyways, thanks, good people of Reddit, setting us straight.
Doing your job.
Yeah. Okay, so shall we get into today's case?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh God, it's a doozy.
Yeah, this is a lot. We are talking about Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, who are also known as the Ken and Barbie killers because they're hot and they kill people.
I don't even think they're that hot, like, to be honest.
Well, conventionally hot.
Kind of.
No?
I don't know. I don't think. Anyway, I'm not going to judge people's looks.
Okay,
but, like,
okay.
You know.
I mean, their personalities make them
Disgusting.
vile. But yeah. Okay. Well, interesting case for me and you specifically because it's a local case.
Yeah, another local one. You guys, we live in a really...
We're on a roll with local cases.
There's a lot.
We have Russell Williams, Adam Strong, then this one. I don't know if there was another one.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, something about where we live. There's some fucked up
Something in
shit
the water.
happens. So, for those that don't know, this case took place in Scarborough, Ontario, Canada, which is right next to Toronto, and that's the city that we grew up in. Scarborough is right on the eastern border of Toronto.
Yeah, technically, I think it's part of Toronto after amalgamation. It's like, it is Toronto.
It's basically where we live. And also, some of the events also took place in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is a few hours drive away.
Yeah.
But very local. However, a little bit before our time, all of the events of this case are from about 1987 to 1992, but pretty recent. And aside from that, this is one of the cases where everything we know about it is very detailed and unbelievably horrific, to be honest. Like, really, really fucked up.
I like, just for anybody's knowledge, like, I know a lot about this case. I've looked into it pretty deeply, and not for a number of years. So, you know, a lot of it is, I'm pretty sure Hanna probably has a lot of things I haven't heard or things that I didn't remember. But yeah, this one's fucked.
It's super fucked. It's one of those things where it's like there's so many layers to it that are just so unforgivable. So we definitely need to give like an extra explicit content warning in this case, especially regarding sexual violence.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a lot of the details in this case. I want to take a really, really deep dive because I think that anybody who knows about true crime knows about this case.
Yeah,
obviously.
It's pretty popular.
Very popular, very well known, especially in Canada. But I researched a lot and I want to get into a really deep dive about all the details, mostly just to understand like all the aspects of this case and just what the fuck happened here.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go too much into the really, really graphic details.
Yeah, we know you're not super into graphic details.
I mean, part of me honestly wants to, but I know.
Like all
not
of
going to describe any arm mutilations this time.
Really explicit.
Yeah, maybe I will get into some, like I want to get into some explicit details, but I don't want to go overboard.
Yeah, but just the point is like if you have a hard time listening to anything to do with sexual violence or rape, like maybe this is not for you.
So here's some things I wanted to talk about in the overall story of this. I want to talk about the backstories of Paul and Carla. I want to talk about each of them, how they grew up, their childhoods, everything that happened in their lives before they met. I want to talk about their meeting. I want to talk about the dynamics of their relationship in general, which I think is extremely interesting and probably not surprised. Very toxic relationship.
Really?
Can you believe that? Obviously, their crimes. I want to talk about how they got caught. I want to talk about the aftermath of their crimes, the trials, everything that was portrayed about them in the media, their sentences. And both of them are still alive, so I want to talk about what they're up to now, the latest things we know about them. And yeah, there's clearly a lot to dig into. So this is going to be a multiple part series of episodes. I am thinking 3 parts. And today, solid 3-parter. Today is going to be the light information. We're really going to focus, the lightest part of it, everything. We're going to focus on both Paul and Carla's backstories, mostly because I really want to try and understand them as individuals and then also as a couple before we really get into all the details of their crimes. And even though we won't get into necessarily like the most important and significant aspects of this case until the next episode, which is going to focus on their murders that they committed, I still think this part is really, really interesting. And there is a lot here.
Oh, I'm like the backstory I think is like sometimes the most interesting, or at least it gives you a really good foundation for going forward, like why they did that.
I 100% think so. And there's a lot of things in this part that I'm going to kind of like mention that may not seem that significant, but it's going to come into play later. And there's a lot of there's a lot of foreshadowing, if that's the right word for it. There's a lot of signs of what went down later.
A lot of red flags.
Oh my God. Yeah. We're going to need a red flag counter for this episode. Seriously. We should have gotten a red flag.
We need one.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Be ready to count the red flags. Okay, so before I get into the first part of the case, I want to shout out a couple books that I got a lot of information from. There's a few well-known books out there that cover this case. Like there's, I think, 2 or 3, I think around 3 books that are well-known where if you want details, like the brutal fucking details of this case, you go to those books. So like I said, I'm probably not going to go into every explicit detail that was covered in the book I read, but if you want to read those details, you can. So the one that I ended up reading is called Lethal Marriage, The Unspeakable Crimes of Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka by Nick Prawn. So that's the book that really, really details their crimes, which we won't talk about all of them yet today, but we will. But a lot of details are there. And another book I also read that I will shout out is called Deadlier Than the Male, True Stories of Women Who Kill by Terry Manners, which has a lot of information, obviously specifically about Carla, that I also used to fill in some of the blanks, as well as good old internet research. Thank you, internet.
Internet. What would we do without you?
Oh, God, seriously. Last thing before we get into this. Let me rate this case on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to go with a 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
10.
I had to. There's so many reasons for it. It's going to become clear during the series of episodes. It's a 10 for me.
Hannah, you're doing all the 10s. My God.
Yeah. Do you think, what you know about this case, do you think it's a 10? Like, before you hear the details?
It's pretty up there. Yeah. It's pretty up there.
I
would put it somewhere between an 8 and a 10.
Yeah.
Based on what I know. But based off what you are going to, like, you're going to say to me, I will put it somewhere there.
Like, to me, the reason I rated that is because I read this book, Lethal Marriage. Had I not read that book, I don't know that I would have. And I don't want to, like, spoil the events of this case, but this was one of those situations where there's video evidence of everything that went down. So Paul and Carla created videotapes, like, of their crimes. And
what is with people doing that?
I know that happens a lot. People do that a lot.
Russell, like...
Yeah, it's crazy.
Maybe Herb did that.
It's very incriminating. Yeah, Russell Williams. But
that's just like such narcissism. Like you really don't think you're gonna get caught.
Yeah, and getting the gratification of watching it back too, I think, is a huge part of this, which we will get into. But so those tapes were never released to the public, as far as we know. I'll go into more detail about them. However, the tapes there are transcripts in the book that I read. So that shit is burned into my memory. Like, I read this book years ago. Curious. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not going to go into everything about it, but if you are interested, read the book or read one of the books that have the tape transcripts in them. And just I did not see, or like, there was no tape transcript. Well, I guess I read the details of the arm cutting situation in the Anthill Kids case. But if there were tape transcripts of a lot of what went down, I think that, like, you know what I mean? That's
Well, it's one thing to imagine it in your own head and like put it in your own way, but it's another to be told explicitly, like, this is exactly what happened.
This is what fucking happened, and we know, and it is disgusting. But I will let you judge for yourself how bad you think this is, and for the audience, would love to hear your feedback as well. For now, shall we get into it?
Ooh, I'm kind of scared, but yeah.
Okay, don't be scared, because this part is...
No, I'm not scared. I'm just I'm ready to be creeped.
What am I even saying? As if a little light true crime could scare you.
No.
This is a bedtime story, Madison.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to bed after this. So
yeah. This part is... I mean, we'll see. In my notes, I didn't necessarily write every detail, but if it happens to come up during our conversation and you ask me, I can provide more. So
dope. I'll ask.
Okay. Yeah, you can. So let's start with the Paul side of the story. Mm-hmm. And we're going to begin with Kenneth and Marilyn Bernardo, his parents. Kenneth and Marilyn met in 1957 when their families became neighbors, and 3 years later, they got married in 1960. So I'll note that although Marilyn was raised in what was described as a well-to-do and stable household, Kenneth's father, Paul's grandfather, who was also a successful man, was described as being abusive to his wife and children. So we can see kind of like a cycle. Yeah. I don't know his father before him, what happened.
I bet he was abusive too.
Maybe he was. It seems like the cycle was present there. So like I said, Kenneth and Marilyn, got married in 1960, and Marilyn gave birth to a son and then a daughter shortly after that. So Kenneth, like his dad before him, was abusive to his wife and kids. So, shocker. Probably learned it from his dad. Yeah. Side note, I didn't dive too deep into Kenneth's father, Paul's grandfather. I didn't really find that much info about him, but I read that he was this really successful guy. He owned a tile company, and like seemed like he had everything going for him. So I don't know.
Except that he was a piece of shit.
Yeah, like why was he such a dick? Because he was like successful. And I mean, not that doesn't go hand in hand, but there didn't really seem to be like an obvious reason.
Well, then that makes more sense that it was like that just happened to him.
Yeah, I would believe that. Meanwhile, Marilyn seemed to come from like a more stable household.
That's so funny because I feel like that's like kind of like Paul and Carla.
It totally, yep. There's a lot, everything in this case, there's a lot of like patterns to it where it's like, oh, it makes sense. So what I read about Kenneth, Paul's dad, seems like he was quite an asshole. He was physically and verbally abusive to his wife, Marilyn. That's known as a fact. And actually, after a couple of years of their marriage, after Marilyn had given birth to the first son and daughter.
Is the first son Paul?
No, Paul's the last.
Oh.
So there's only 2 at this point. Paul's the last one. David and Debbie, I believe, are the other siblings. Did not look too much into them, incidentally. Curious a little bit about what happened, but who knows. So Marilyn, after the first 2 kids were born and like Kenneth was like this piece of shit abusing her, she ended up kind of like, from what I read in a source, seeking refuge with an old boyfriend and rekindling a relationship with her old boyfriend. And she became pregnant by this gentleman.
Oh.
So, yeah, her like fling, her ex.
And that was Paul's dad?
That was Paul. That baby was going to be Paul. So Kenneth, even though he knew she wasn't pregnant with his child, like for all intents and purposes, wanted to stay with her. And he even agreed to be listed as the biological father on the child's birth certificate.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, but that doesn't set up a very good scenario for baby Paul.
Not ideal. Because even though Kenneth like wanted to stay with Marilyn, during her pregnancy, he continuously abused her. Yeah. Not fucking good for the kid, obviously. He continued to abuse her, and then like he was alternating between ignoring her at times, but also physically beating her at other times, which is pretty much the worst thing that you could do.
That's just so shitty.
It's so shitty.
I just can't even imagine, especially like myself as like in a marriage with like 2 kids, and it's like, my God, I can't imagine like just being beaten, like being a pregnant woman and being beaten.
Yeah.
God. Like,
it's fucking terrible. And to make things even worse, during Marilyn's pregnancy, Kenneth moved the family away from their home in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, to Scarborough, which is a few hours away. So this move essentially isolated Marilyn.
Right.
She didn't know anyone in Scarborough. She had left all her family and friends behind in her hometown, Kitchener-Waterloo.
Classic isolation move.
Classic. Fucking textbook by Kenneth. Isolating his wife and basically making her like completely vulnerable and under his control. So even from this, Paul hasn't even been born yet, and you just really don't have to wonder where he got it from.
No. And that's like, you know, you feel bad for him as a child. Like,
I feel super bad.
You set something up. You set him up for complete failure.
100%. And not to say that every person from an abusive childhood becomes abusive themselves.
No.
But it's certainly going to fuck them up mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. And it's like fucking congratulations and like good on people who come out of things better. But like, my God, you early childhood like intervention or early childhood, like things that happen to you in your early childhood that are
huge,
so avoidable.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes me so sad. Like, especially, you know, like having little babies myself and being like, how could somebody do something bad to you?
I know.
I can't imagine. It just hurts me.
It's so sad. And honestly, I imagine like from everything, because I'll talk more about Kenneth, Paul's dad. He's got like a bunch of fucked up shit that he does. But he, I assume, was like a victim when it started as a child. He didn't know any better. And when you're raised in that type of household where there's like random, inexplicable, unreasonable anger and violence, you don't know anything else.
Yeah, it's true.
And like probably his dad was, you know, same thing. So it's insane. Anyways, Paul Bernardo was born August 27th, 1964 in a hospital in Toronto, Ontario. Based on Marilyn's journals, she described Paul as her easiest child in terms of him being the quietest one, but she also noted that he was not at all affectionate. And she also described him in her journals as selfish and stubborn at times, which he's got an abusive piece of shit dad. So like, how's he going to be a normal kid?
Plus, like, all children are innately selfish.
Sure. Yeah. They haven't developed the like ability to empathize until a certain age. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Based on different sources I read, this is where I was telling you this before. I consulted a lot of different sources to get as many details as I possibly could. Mm-hmm. And there was a ton of conflicting information.
Yeah, as there is generally.
So there's going to be certain things where I'll mention that I read, like conflicting accounts. But in this specific case, apparently sometime between age 2 and age 5, which it would be significantly different, depending which, but Paul couldn't speak yet. So I know for sure by age 2 he couldn't speak yet, which I believe is quite late for not speaking.
I'm experiencing this right now. 2 is like a little bit late, yeah.
It's not super late, but 5 I feel like would be
5
fairly
is very
late.
late,
So
yes.
that was the case. Lethal Marriage said 5. Some other sources I read said 2. So
yeah, that's a pretty big difference.
it's pretty big, right? And apparently he would like make noises and he would stutter a lot, but he couldn't really speak properly, which, by the way, makes me feel really bad for him as a kid. Not excusing anything he did later, but I'm just imagining like his dad abusing him, getting mad at him for no reason, probably made him feel extremely fearful, because I think stuttering is a big sign of someone holding fear.
And also when you can't talk, I'm learning a little bit about this now, but like when you have trouble communicating as a child, it leads you to become can lead you to become very frustrated.
Sure, yeah.
Because you can't say what you want to say, and you know what you want to say, but you can't say it yourself.
Well, he definitely had a lot of pent-up frustration, you could say, later, so that tracks. In Lethal Marriage, it says that he was suffering from something called aphasia. Don't know if I'm saying that right, which is a lack of oxygen to the brain during his birth. Yeah, but doctors had said that there was no permanent damage and he would learn to speak. So
doctors are not always right.
Yeah, what the fuck do doctors know? But sorry, doctors, you guys are great.
Harsh.
Yeah, they're fine. But in a different source, I also read that doctors ended up discovering that his tongue was fused to the roof of his mouth, and then he had a surgery and then was able to speak more normally. So not really sure. Seems like there were some different medical issues. I'm assuming that honestly, most of it is probably due to like pregnancy stress on the part of his mom. And because like, I don't know. I don't really know. But assuming...
It's definitely really hard to know something like that. Like a lot of stuff, like just... people are born with like stuff in the mouth, like fissures and whatever.
It's normal.
That's pretty. It happens quite often, I think.
By the way, sorry, doctors. I didn't mean to tell you this. I don't know why I was painting you all with a run brush over there.
No,
you guys are smart.
This gets you going. You know,
yeah.
This kind of content.
It's true. Okay, so basically, throughout all of Paul's childhood, his family life was very troubled. I already mentioned that Kenneth was abusive, but yeah, it goes a little bit further than that. Not only did he openly talk about how unattractive his wife was in front of her and the kids, which was so shitty, and Marilyn was struggling so much. She was like, I think just like emotional eating because she was stressed, and then he was like making fun of her for being fat and gross and like undesirable and all this stuff.
Also, if he was like sexually abusing her too, it's like some people like do stuff to like make themselves be less attractive to like keep off.
That's true, defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It could be. I actually don't know. I'm assuming he was probably sexually abusing her because he was doing every other kind of abuse.
Seems like that type of guy.
It fucking tracks. But listen to this. Really disgusting. He began to express pedophiliac urges and started to molest young girls starting in 1969 when Paul was 5.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, where the hell did he get it from?
I know.
Fucking Kenneth.
It's like great fucking role model, Kenneth. So in 1975, he was charged with child molestation, but I don't believe he served any jail time. But he did have to go to court.
What is with people being charged for like sexually abusing children and not getting jail time?
Go free, man.
Oh, you molested a child. See you later. Like, what?
Yeah. I don't know what the deal is with that. And then I also read in another source, not really sure about the details of this, but apparently he did also sexually abuse his own daughter, Paul's sister, when she was a child, which I would believe, but didn't go too much into that. But absolutely repulsive. In Lethal Marriage, the book I read, it described him as having uncontrollable urges. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than people who abuse their own children.
Nothing. I mean, just terrible. So, yeah, 10 years old in 1975 when, when Kenneth was like charged with child sexual abuse, Paul found out about this, obviously, found out about his dad having to go to court. So, obviously, it affected him. It upset him as a kid, as it, of course, would. And in Lethal Marriage, it says that shortly after this event, it didn't actually officially say like this was why, but it did describe that shortly after this event, one of Paul's neighbors, a woman, caught him watching her undress outside the window while he was very aroused. 10-year-old Paul creeping on a woman undressing outside her window. So first red flag, number one.
Oh, there's already been like 10.
Yeah, that for Paul though. Yeah. Paul, he's doing his thing.
Ew.
So apparently this neighbor was like creeped out, obviously, but she kind of just like shooed him away and chased him away.
She was probably like, well, boys will be boys.
Yeah, exactly. She had the boys will be boys mentality. He's just a prepubescent boy. And she didn't mention it to his mother or anyone at the time. However, I think it's safe to say this is the first known sign, at least what I read, about some really pathological, like, sexual behavior from Paul.
And, like, how could you even, like, think that anything different would happen when you had a dad like that?
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to say how could you blame him, because I just don't want to go there, but, like, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. Can we go there with him as a kid?
What kind of child do you think you're going to create?
Yeah. Like, as a kid, can he be blamed for that, like, creepy behavior at 10?
I don't know. In a way, no. I mean, what do you know at 10? What do you know at 20?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I just don't know if I want to go there.
Yeah, fair.
Myself, but it's very like A plus B, like 1 + 1 = 2. Like, what do you? It is,
like, of course this is gonna happen. Okay, so obviously Kenneth's behavior was extremely toxic to his family. So not surprisingly at all, Marilyn continued to seriously struggle mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? All throughout Paul's childhood, she became more and more withdrawn until eventually she moved into the basement of their Scarborough house, telling Paul she was more comfortable that way.
Imagine being like such a, like, I imagine her just being a shell of a person, just excuse me, just accepting that that's your life, like, in the basement.
Yeah, just like giving up, probably like completely defeated by her husband. So
that's horrible.
It's fucking horrible. And what is that modeling to young Paul?
That you can just abuse women and they'll just
take it, lay down and take it. Yep. So despite everything going on at home, on the outside, the child Paul Bernardo was basically like this perfect appearing, solid, normal, middle-class boy. He was this cute blonde kid. He had a sweet smile. His dad was a chartered accountant. His mom was a Girl Guide leader. They had a pool. The kids had nice clothes. They went to summer camp. They went on vacations every year. Just overall, seemed to be a very normal family.
Damn, what's like a vacation with a family like that like?
Yeah.
What do you do on a vacation like that?
I bet you they like act like it. If the cards are in the right, like if everything's in the right place, they probably act really great on vacation. And then if anything goes wrong, it's like back to how it. Yeah. That's what I would guess.
Like, we had a pretty, I think, normal-ish family, and like vacations were pretty brutal because like when we were teenagers, we were shitty.
Yeah, teenagers.
So, like, I can't even imagine.
That's true. There's some of that in this too. But
we just like fought the entire time.
I could see that.
But like we were not like nothing. We were a very like quote unquote normal family. So like I just can't imagine what like such a toxic household would be like on vacation. Like, what are you doing?
It wouldn't be fun, I assume. Like, it's so hard because I feel like there's a big theme in this whole case about like pretending to appear normal.
Yeah.
And that kind of being like a facade. And so I'm assuming they use the vacations as a way to like act normal.
Yeah, for sure.
But so as far as like Paul's childhood and upbringing, he seemed, after he like recovered from having a stutter, he seemed like he was mostly normal socially in terms of like he had friends. But especially in Lethal Marriage, I read about a few instances of like other kids were taunting him, like they were making fun of his last name. But it doesn't seem like anything too horrible. Just like kids making fun of him from what I read. But I think there was a time where he was like this like cute kid and he felt kind of weak and picked on at a certain point in his childhood. And then obviously like at home, that family's not doing anything to raise your self-esteem.
No.
Guaranteed. So as much as things kind of seemed normal. As time went on and Paul grew up, cracks started to show.
Mm-hmm.
His neighbors couldn't help but notice regular screaming arguments emerging from the Bernardo household.
Mm.
But apparently, Paul would show up in the neighborhood the next day, waving and smiling as if nothing had happened.
He must have learned really early to, like, put on a face, you know?
For sure. Especially because he had this, like, cute blonde kid appeal. And apparently, like, you know, a lot of the... Because he was described as, like, he's the easy one, he's the polite one, he's the quiet one. So he had this, like, good boy image in his neighborhood and everything. But during Paul's preteen years, I did find a few more accounts of him spying on people in differing capacities, and then, like, also being a peeping Tom, creeping on women through their windows while, like, masturbating sometimes as a preteen. So
cute.
That happened. But like I said, basically this is the trend that I read from everything about Paul. Everything seems normal on the outside, but in terms of their stability, the cracks are showing in terms of like Kenneth, Marilyn, and Paul. And I don't know about the brother and sister. I didn't really look too much into them, but from everything I know, they aren't really talked about.
Yeah. I mean, it's the type of thing where it's kind of like, you know, leave them out of it.
I know. I'm just like, whatever. Let them live. I mean, who knows?
People who, like, are this brother and sister of Paul Bernardo. Like, that fucking sucks.
But I wonder, like, are they, like, deviants in the way that Paul is and was?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to look into. I'm interested.
Like, how were they affected by that upbringing? Because I do think, like, the nature-nurture thing, it's a combination of both.
And then I think with some abusive situations with siblings, like some siblings just, like, absorb way more of it than the other ones, you know?
And then some kind of, like, gang up and they, like, take the abuser side, which we will see what happens with Paul. So as a teenager, Paul went to Wilfrid Laurier Collegiate Institute and he got good grades. Overall, continued to seem like an upstanding kid. However, when he was 16, his parents had, as usual, a really bad fight. And after that fight was over, his mom ended up spitefully revealing to Paul that his dad wasn't really his biological father.
Oh, so he found out later in life. That's so Ted
16.
Bundy.
Yeah, very Ted Bundy. And very, like, conflicting accounts from what I read. Some people say, again, we can't really know because who's this?
Who was there?
Who's saying this? Yeah, where are people getting this information? I'm going to assume if it's published in a book, it's somewhat researched and legit. That's what I read in several books, but I also read in some other situations, like he found out by accident, whatever. But that happened. He found out for a fact Kenneth was not his biological father. And in everything I've read about this case, apparently this was a huge turning point for Paul.
Yeah. It really does something to, like...
It fucked him
fucks
up
with you.
when he was already fucked up.
Yeah, that's, like, exactly... Like, that's one of the big things that happened to Ted Bundy when he found out that his mom, or that who he thought was his sister, was actually his mom. And that was, like, huge for him.
Yeah. It I guess... I can't relate to this at all. So I don't really understand the psychology of it. But apparently it just creates, like, a ton of confusion around your identity.
Yeah, well...
Who am I really?
And, I don't... Again, it's like you, I don't... It's hard to imagine what that would be like, but you can only imagine that it would just be like, what the... Like, it would be so confusing.
Yeah. And he's already in such an unstable environment. So, like I said, apparently this was a huge turning point for him. And that was said by experts who analyzed the case, but also people who knew him personally at the time said it really, really profoundly affected him.
Yeah.
So even though he'd been upset with his dad for being a fucking disgusting sexual predator, he was really disgusted by his mom's infidelity, and he began to openly verbally abuse her as well, calling her names including
Poor Marilyn.
slob and whore. Yeah, poor fucking Marilyn. Like, I mean, obviously it's not right that she, I guess, cheated on Kenneth, but it's also like, you should have just fucking left the guy. I mean, again, maybe she didn't have the support to do so. Like, we can't really... No, but it's shitty all around.
Yeah, I think it's,
for everyone
like,
involved.
Generally really shitty to cheat on people. Like, really, I hate that. But, like, also kind of seemed like a huge asshole.
Yeah, Kenneth probably pushed her to it. But then it's just sad to see that, like, she didn't feel... Because it's... Honestly, if a guy's abusing you and it takes you cheating to get the strength to leave him, I mean, two wrongs don't make a right, but proportionally, it's like, what's worse, cheating or being abusive? Like, I think being abusive is worse. And if her cheating would have gotten her out of it, then I would have almost excused it. Like, I would have excused it because fuck you, Kenneth.
Beating
You're
her,
a piece of shit.
you don't owe.
You don't
beating you,
exactly.
You don't owe them anything.
You don't owe him loyalty at that point. But the shitty thing is that she still fucking gave him loyalty.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just so sad all around.
It's hard because I grew up, like I said, in a very normal household, so it's very difficult to put yourself in somebody's position and like to really understand what that's like. But I can only imagine it's just horrific.
Yeah, agreed. So
like torture.
Yeah, it's got to be, and like, yeah. So, like we said, Marilyn was essentially like bedridden for a lot of it. Like she was so depressed she couldn't fucking get out of bed. She was just like not taking care of herself at all, obviously not present for her kids, just defeated. And that's not a good sign for how Paul would come to see women, because basically after that situation where his mom revealed his true father, experts started to later on experts have speculated that this event triggered Paul when he was a teenager to develop not only a hatred towards society overall, but especially anger towards women. And like I said before, particularly at this point directed towards his mother through verbal abuse. And not surprisingly, all the anger that he was feeling started to creep into his sexual life. Yeah. So.
Oh God, this is going to get so dark, Hannah, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to get really dark. Get ready. Not that bad yet. I don't know. I'm kind of having that thing that I had with the Anthill kids where when I first read about it and when I'm kind of researching and making notes, it's so disgusting to the point where I'm like, I got to leave details out. I can't talk about this. But then I go through a phase where I'm like, whatever. Which is bad. This case is actually disgusting, but it's just that like I become desensitized to it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's horrible. I do not think that I'm going to go into the explicit details as much as I read. But we'll see.
Yeah, if you want to know, you can find them.
Yeah, that's the thing. And at any point, that information is out there, including in the book I read. But yeah, so mid-teenage Paul, remember, he was creeping around, he was looking in windows, but in his later teens, he started to have a lot more violent sexual tendencies involving like the domination of women, and he began to see women as objects for sexual gratification of men.
Lovely.
Also, can I just say, why is it that I feel like physical violence is less bad to talk about than sexual violence? Like, I almost feel like physical violence, like talking about gore and mutilation, to me, I'm so much more desensitized to it, whereas like explicit sexual violence seems so much worse.
I think it's because sexual violence has that aspect to it. It has like the gore and the crazy, like the physical pain on top of an extreme violation.
Yeah.
It's so violating to think about being sexually abused or raped, God forbid.
Yep.
There's something that is just so innately wrong and just a violation of your being.
It's like another level of it.
It's another level of pure disgust.
And plus I also kind of feel like sexuality is kind of like a taboo in our culture, whereas violence is obviously like very much in it, like video games, horror movies, like that stuff to me, like, oh, someone getting their head chopped off, whatever, because I've seen it in a million movies. But yeah, so that being said, Paul really did start to seek this out and become desensitized to it. So so he at this point started to see women as objects for the sexual gratification of men, which I assume has a lot to do with his father's influence.
Yep.
And so Paul first started exploring these fantasies through pornography. And for a while, that was enough for him. For a short while.
Never enough.
Not going to be enough for long. So when Paul was 19, he started a Bachelor of Arts program in commerce at the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus. Around that time, Paul started dating a 16-year-old girl who was his first documented assault victim, his girlfriend. So essentially, this girl was vulnerable, obviously, being younger than him and like inexperienced in the dating world. So he would, from what I read in Lethal Marriage, he would force her into sexual experiences that she didn't consent to. And he's described as being overly aggressive sexually with her, to the point where she was like crying after sexual encounters, but kind of felt like she had to go along with it because, he pressured her into things.
And he's way older than her.
He was older than her, and he was, like manipulative and cool and charming as they tend to be. But at a certain point, he got so aggressive that she actually broke things off with him because of that.
Thank God.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad she was able to get out of it. And I know we talked earlier about like how explicit I'm going to get, because there are way fucking more details of like the specific assaults of his girlfriend. But I decided to just include only what I feel like is really important to the overall story. So if you want to read those details, check out Lethal Marriage.
I'm kind of
curious. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of curious too. Do you want me to like tell you? Like basically Lethal Marriage would just say stuff like she would, he would like drive her to like an abandoned parking lot where they would like hook up in the car. And then he started being like, now I need to tie you up. Now I need to like anally rape you. Now I need to force you to like whatever, stuff like that. And she didn't want to. He would want her to like penetrate herself with different objects. She didn't want to, but he would make her do it. And then she would like cry and be sad about it essentially because she didn't want to do it. And that's really fucked up. But it wasn't like necessarily nearly as fucked up as he would become. But that is still pretty jarring to read about.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, super shitty. So late teens, early 20s Paul, he's this university student. He seems cool. He's like this handsome guy, although Madison does not think he's handsome.
It's more Carla I don't find attractive.
Oh, okay. See, I think Carla's more attractive than Paul because Paul's not my type.
Well, neither of them are my type.
Yeah, Carla's not really my type. But
Carla just has like an evil look to her.
You know,
even
we're going to talk a lot about Carla in this series, but I think that's so fun. I know everyone fucking says that, everything. And it's so funny because
she does not look like a Barbie doll, okay?
I mean, Barbie dolls have dead eyes.
No, Barbie dolls have bright, shining eyes. Yeah, like they're dead inside for other reasons.
Yeah,
but this is like
she looks dead inside. And it's funny because everyone fucking says that. And then I remember reading on Reddit because gotta read Reddit for details about every case. I found some really fucking crazy shit on Reddit about this case, but that will come in later. But everyone was kind of saying like, yeah, Carla's like this like dead-eyed girl. But somebody else was kind of like, guys, are we all saying this because we know how fucked up she is? Like, would we say this if we just saw a photo of her and didn't know her crimes?
No, even her younger years, like she has dead eyes.
It's very interesting. Carla has some like, I'll get into talking about Carla still in this episode, but unlike Paul, there's not really the same information out there about her. In a lot of like, there's not as many details, but that dead eyes thing kind of seems to be a theme. Not gonna lie,
because she has them.
I guess she does have them. I don't know. I mean, we'll let you be the judge.
Yeah,
we will talk
about the
judge. Yeah, we will talk about Carla. We will include photos of her. So yeah, late teens, early 20s Paul. He's hot, allegedly. He's like this all-Canadian guy. He's
all Canadian.
All Canadian. I wrote that. He's not American, he's Canadian. He's like this like white guy. He's 6'1". He's blonde. I feel like that's like a typical, like I feel like if you're tall as a man, you're automatically attractive. I don't know. So I have to talk about this. At this point, Paul begins a very cringy rap career, or like my God, rap career. Do you know about his rap?
No.
Okay, so I did not pull it up, but I can pull it up on my phone because I did find it on YouTube.
Please.
Should we? Okay. Let me get this.
I did not know about his rap career.
You didn't know about his rap career?
I love finding things to make fun of about
it is
all these guys. Especially
ridiculous.
Especially because, like, you know, there's a whole thing where, like, you know, our true crime podcasts and videos or whatever, glorifying these people. And it's like...
Yeah, we're not... Well, I wouldn't say we're glorifying. We're making entertainment. We're exploiting them.
But even to them, it's like they want to go down as being famous for their crimes or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's very important to, like, make fun of them and let them know that they're not the...
You're not cool.
Yeah. You're stupid and lame.
I'm just going to play a couple, like a little YouTube clip.
Did you ever get caught? No, never. Why, they say. I'm a deadly innocent guy. You ever get caught? Did you ever get caught? Did you ever get caught? No, never, never. Why? I'm a deadly innocent guy. So keep on fronting, man. You fronting and you're right like you tough, man. You ain't been where I've been, man. You ain't seen what I've seen. You ain't at where I'm at, man. So this is not replacing Stick Up Kid, okay? Deadly Innocence is the theme song, the title track to the album. And it's basically establishing my street credibility. This is more of a, you know, your hardcore battling the world through your ways of getting your illegal money or whatever you're doing. And you use everything, all your feelings, and the real life feelings you all experience, including everything you experience in all the smuggling and all the other activities to make a buck.
But yeah, so Paul has this like ridiculously fucking cringy rap persona that he's developing. Unfortunately, I wish he had like a really good rap name, because I feel like that would just be the icing on the
top.
cake. Yeah. But he goes by Paul Bernardo, like he goes by his name. And however, his kind of like theme, like the title of his first album, his first project was Deadly Innocence.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically like all his raps are about how he's like, looks like this like nice, pretty boy, but he's actually like a tough and fucking angry and violent person underneath the surface.
Which is true.
Which is accurate. And anyways, these raps are available on YouTube. Lots of lyrics in Lethal Marriage if you're interested in checking them out. But it's all kind of with the theme of like, I look so nice, I'm never gonna get caught. I'm a deadly innocent guy.
Wow. Did that work out for you, Paul Bernardo?
Didn't work out, but I mean, too bad he didn't pursue a rapping career, because that would have been a better path for him. He would have gone
so far.
I mean, yeah. Ugh, it's bad. So the rap career kind of tracks with everything else, because apparently, like, in his dating life, especially, he would be super sweet to women at first, appear very charming. He was the king of first impressions. And then when he got close to women, that's where he would become violent and abusive.
Scott Peterson.
Oh, is it like him?
Well, he was just very good at first impressions.
Yeah. I feel like a lot, like, anybody...
It's very easy to give off a good first impression.
Yeah.
That's why you can't trust a first impression.
That's very true. I heard there was this thing where, like, after a certain number of weeks, people will reveal to who they are. I think it's like 6 weeks or something. You can only pretend to be someone for 6 weeks scientifically.
Really?
I don't know if that's like where that's from.
Unless you're like actually a serial killer, like actually a psychopath.
But maybe in 6 weeks, the mask slips a little bit.
It's possible.
I feel like a lot of people, like, it's pretty easy to be charming if your goal is to get people to like you. You just have to flatter them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's very easy to like learn what a person wants to hear and just say it.
Especially a pattern of like younger women, probably. Yeah. I believe he mostly dated younger women at this point, and more vulnerable women. And he could just be super charming and nice to them. And then when he got in, he got super abusive. And also, so at this point, young, like 20-ish year old Paul, I want to emphasize this because it's very relevant to what happened later. He was like obsessed with pornography. So he was like going to, at this point, did not have the internet really.
Oh my God.
Thank God.
Where
like,
you
imagine,
had to go watch it, and like there's like little theater things.
Well, not the theaters. He would go to stores in downtown Toronto and buy like the top shelf porn, which is like the most fucked up porn. And he was really into anything that was like amateur filmed and things with women being raped and abused, shockingly. And I believe he did also watch child porn.
Ew.
So I do believe there was he did not discriminate in terms of the age of the women.
Because he was into young girls.
He was dating young girls, and I think he liked, from what I understand about him, he liked the power aspect of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That the domination was like a big deal for him, which I assume that Paul as a kid felt super fucking helpless because his dad was a piece of shit. Yeah. He saw his mom acting pathetic. So no offense, like not actually, I don't think she was acting pathetic, but in his eyes.
Yeah.
I think how she was acting is pretty fucking reasonable when you're being abused by a guy and you feel trapped, so fine. But anyways, Paul's in university. So while he was in university, he supplemented his income at the time by smuggling cigarettes. But after he graduated in 1987, he began to work for an accounting firm in the Scarborough offices of the company Price Waterhouse. So that's 1987. He's graduated. He's this up-and-coming accountant at this point. But here we go with Paul taking things to the next fucking level with his crimes. So in May of 1987, when he was 22, Paul committed his first rape of a woman who was a stranger to him. Because I think it's very safe to say I would consider him raping his girlfriends, even though,
for sure.
like, obviously he knew them. Some people think that, like, rape only counts if you don't know the person, but any non-consensual sexual assault
Absolutely.
is very fairly a rape. So
You can absolutely rape your girlfriend or wife.
100%. So I think for him, like, that people say, like, this, or what I read, this was his first rape. I think it's safe to say there were probably many rapes before this, but this is the first documented known rape case of, like, a random strange woman. So this woman was 21 at the time, and Paul followed her home one night and assaulted her in front of her parents' house before, like, running away. So I hate that.
Yeah, that's so
Following her
creepy.
home, disgusting. Right, she was so close to getting home.
Imagine, like, yeah, you're right in front of your own
I
home.
hate that.
That's so terrifying.
Just so terrifying. So, I mean, I guess the good thing I can say about this is that he didn't, like, permanently physically injure her, or
like he let her go.
he was violent and he was aggressive and he was, like, obviously horrifically, like, violating her. But yeah, so listen to fucking this. Only 10 days later, he struck again after the first one. He approached and raped a 19-year-old woman at the back of her parents' house. So
What's with it being, like, at their
I know,
parents'
I guess
house?
because they're young. But I believe what happens, all the cases, there's a fucking lot. But in some of the cases, he would follow people home. In some of the cases, he would be, like, creeping around the neighborhood, because apparently he was, like, peeping in windows, like, up until the day he, spoiler alert, was arrested. But apparently there were times where he would, like, creep, see somebody and be like, all right, next time I'm going to be, like, stalking, seeing you get off a bus stop and follow you home.
Finding out their, like, patterns and stuff.
That was, and then I think there was a few situations where he would, like, approach someone, or, like, he'd be like, I don't know, it would be at night always, and he would, like, be in the shadows and be like, hey, come over here. Or they'd see, like, kind of like, hey, is that, like, a gentleman approaching me? And there's at least a few situations where he kind of, like, lured people in, and then they just didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to, like, come clean about what happened, which is insane that women feel that way. But it's a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
They feel like
that's a thing.
Yeah, they feel like the police is going to be like, fuck you and whatever. So,
but yeah, especially if you don't have, like, a good description.
yeah,
or
good evidence,
like,
or
because if it's just like this happened to me, if all it is your account,
right, and especially if
What are
it's
you gonna
something
do?
where it's like, yeah, I talked to this guy for a minute and then this happened, it just makes it seem like, were you asking for it? Like, you know, not that it does, but I feel like women would feel afraid to feel that way.
Absolutely.
So that was in May, and then two assaults in May, and then on July 27th, 1987, Paul attempted another rape, but actually his intended victim fought back, so he ran away when she fought back. So
Fucking good for her.
yeah,
I love hearing about people getting away.
there was a few like that. Some of which I wrote in the notes, not all of which I did, but that did happen several times. And I don't believe, like, I think at this point, to varying degrees, his victims had seen him, but this hadn't been put together. Nobody was really coming forward, and this information was mostly found out later. So at this point, Paul was, like, becoming a serial offender very quickly, and he was easily getting away with it.
That's insane.
Yeah. 3 times. So 3 known assaults. Is that right? No, sorry. 2 known assaults, and then 1
Who got away?
got away. So the next key detail of this case happens in October 1987. Paul was with his friend at the restaurant of the Howard Johnson Hotel in Scarborough, and this is where he met Carla, the woman who would later become his accomplice in murder. So let me take this opportunity to introduce Carla Homolka. I'll tell you a little bit about her.
Fucking asshole.
This woman. So I did not find as much solid information on her as I did with Paul. But what I do know is Carla was born May 4th, 1970. So she's about 5.5.
He was what, 64?
He was 64, but August. And she was
what,
May.
May?
So
Okay.
she's like 5 3/4 years younger than him. She was born in Port Credit, Ontario, and she was the oldest daughter of Carol and Dorothy Homolka. The family had 3 daughters, Carla in 1970, then Lori, born in 1971, and finally Tammy, born in 1975.
So she's quite a bit younger.
Tammy was the younger one. Lori was just 1 year younger than Carla. And Carla's the oldest, whereas Paul's the youngest. So maybe that's interesting. I don't know.
Birth order is kind of interesting, but
I think sometimes it can play a role in behavior. So, unlike everything that I've read about Paul, apparently Carla's upbringing was not abusive, and it was actually a normal middle-class childhood. I'm not 100% sure about this, to be honest, because I feel like, first of all, there's not that much information, like specific accounts as of her family life as there were with Paul, and also because Carla was, like, later you will see, she was so fucking depraved. So it just makes me question, like, really, was her childhood that great? Like, I mean, there's not that much information, but it makes me feel like, could it have been that great and she still turned out so, like, morally fucked up? I don't know.
Well, I do think, like, there's this nature and nurture, whatever, but there's also, I think, like, one thing that is underrated in the conversation, especially with younger people, is peer groups. Right. I think peer groups have so much influence.
That's fair.
Over, especially like in the adolescent years, whatever. So I think, and like, you know, a relationship is not necessarily a peer group, but like having such a dominating, horrible person, like, you put it in the same category, but I'm not saying it's not like a group of friends. I think like it's very possible, and I obviously don't know any more than you. I think it's very possible that like she could have been like a normal person, but it was like Paul's influence that really turned her in a way.
Yes. And also, I mean, we'll go more into it, but she was young when she met Paul. She was 17. So that is still a very impressionable age.
So impressionable.
Super impressionable. Actually, like extremely so, because it's like the teenage rebellion. So she probably felt at that time, like we'll get more into it, but she probably felt like a little bit estranged from her parents at that point because she was like a teenager. And so Paul became a greater influence. And also, the one like thing that I will say is I assume, like, I think that if somebody's in a really, really supportive environment where their parents know how to like really emotionally connect with the kids, this stuff is a little bit less likely to happen. But I get the impression that like there was a lot of times later in Lethal Marriage where it talked about Carla didn't want to admit a lot of what was happening to her parents. So
for sure. Who tells their parents anything when they're 17?
That's true. That's true. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I know some people whose parents like really work to provide that. But again, you could go any way when you're that age.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know that much about her family or what their like emotional life was like. But Carla's father, Karel, or I think I'm saying that right. It could be like Karel. I'm not really sure, actually. He was a refugee from Czechoslovakia. So when he had first moved to Canada, he was very poor. And so when he got together with Dorothy, the family was very poor. And for Carla's like first few years of life, the family was living in a trailer park in St. Catharines, Ontario. However, in the mid-1970s, Karel started a picture framing business, which did really well, and he was able to move his family to a nice townhouse north of the city, and that's where they were, like this seemingly normal middle-class family. So, as far as Carla's childhood, she seems to be described as this like really intense and determined kid, and a lot of different scenarios, like either teachers or friends said she was like a very all or nothing kind of kid, very like intense. And in Lethal Marriage, the whole story of her childhood is told from the perspective of a childhood friend. So so it's kind of hard to know because it's an outside perspective. And it's like this girl or woman now who doesn't want to give her true name because obviously she doesn't want to be associated with the case. So it's all very much kind of like the childhood memories of someone who knew Carla are what is detailed in this book. So from her perspective, she was really charmed by Carla when she first met Carla as a kid, I think somewhere around like 6 or so years old. She described Carla as like this princess who was so beautiful and had these like beautiful outfits. And
beautiful dead eyes.
Yeah, God. She did not mention the dead eyes, actually. But yeah.
I'm being Carla.
Accurate.
She looked like a dead person her whole life.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'm thinking like the only photos I've seen of her, I feel like, are after she met Paul. So then it like kind of makes sense that he would like crush her spirit. But
I remember seeing
there's ones from before
in childhood.
I mean, a lot of like we'll get into it. A lot of psychiatrists like really, really fucking judge her and are like, why is she the way that she is? Which is fair.
Well, I'm one of those same things.
We would like to know, especially like everything that comes later. So basically like this childhood friend thought Carla was like this beautiful princess, blah, blah, blah. And it describes her like befriending her and then overall like liking her. But now in hindsight makes sense. She highlighted some really off-putting incidents. One of which was like Carla making fun of this girl, which was handicapped, which I think is terrible, but not necessarily a sign of like sociopathy. That can just be done just through like social peer pressure, I feel like.
Yeah.
But apparently she would like tell all these random lies, such as saying like her family had a dog, and this girl's like, I know your family doesn't have a dog.
So I had a friend when I was really young who just made up these like crazy lies for no reason. And
Is she a murderer now?
No. But I remember like I would always come home to my mom and be like, such and such said that she did this and that. And my mom's like, that's not true. Like, it's just don't believe anything she says.
It's so weird. But did that girl have like issues at home? Like,
I would say yes.
Because that's the thing too. I definitely had friends like that when I was growing up, where they would like kind of say shit and say my mom would be like, that's not.
Yeah, the mother was an alcoholic. I know that to be true. So.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. It's like, why was Carla just like this kind of like random liar? I mean, it could be nothing, but is there always a reason for a child to be like kind of deviant in that way?
I feel like it's attention seeking.
It could be attention seeking, which then does that state that Carla didn't get enough attention that she needed as a kid?
Possible. I mean, it's all like I'm no psychiatrist, but
me neither. But
you're
like
not.
To think. I just like to.
I thought you were.
I just like to pretend. Yeah.
No, it's interesting to speculate, but it does seem like attention seeking behavior. Like you're trying to impress people, especially like your peers as a young child. Like I remember this one friend I had, there was like 3 of us, and me and the other friend had we had brothers and sisters, and the other girl only had a brother. And she was like, oh, I had a sister, but when she was 2 days old, she crawled across the street and got hit by a car.
What the fuck?
And I was like, Mom, did you know that such and such girl had a
baby
sister?
Is the same friend that you're talking about?
Yeah, and my mom was like,
fuck.
She did not have a 2-day-old sister that crawled across the street.
Yeah, true. Your mom's like, that's not how it works.
Like, how do you know?
Yeah, Mom.
But it was like very clearly like trying to like, she was like trying to be the leader and like trying to,
It sounds a lot like Carla, because the same thing, this friend would always say, like, Carla always wanted to, like, dictate the games they were playing and be like, this is how we're going to play with the Barbies and that kind of stuff.
She also told us that she had a friend who was she had a cousin who was friends with wolves, but one day the wolves ate her son.
I love that.
And all that was left was the bones.
Okay, I don't like the eating part, but that friends
and I was
with
like,
wolves,
Mom, did you know this? And my mom's like,
you
no,
were such a gullible child.
I was like 6.
Yeah, that's true. We kind of believe everything at that age. That's funny. Yeah, so to me, it's like all like I said, there's not that much about her childhood, and that's what bothers me, because it's like, or at least from what I read, I'm sure like there's that information must be somewhere, but I couldn't really find it in my deep dive. And that's why I'm like, because Carla did so much fucked up shit, it just makes me want to know like the blanks of it all. Like what, because sometimes I think if you're like, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but I think if you're like a sensitive enough child or an impressionable enough child, like little instabilities in your childhood can fuck you up.
It can be enough as like your parents like work
like
too
a divorce
much,
or
or you're a latchkey kid, whatever. Like
your dad maybe,
which is like I don't think that's abusive if your parents like work full time.
It's not abusive, but
it's like to you feel like very slighted by it.
It can be. I don't think it's abusive, but I do think that like it is. Like neglectful. It's not intentionally neglectful, because obviously parents do what they can, but you know that saying, like, it takes a village to raise a child. Like, children are supposed to have like people there for them.
Yeah, and it's
sadly that's not always the case.
Especially tough, and I'm sure maybe you can relate to it, like when your parents are immigrants and maybe you don't have other family around.
Right,
so like every time like your parents need to like work late or whatever, like you don't have somebody to just watch your kid, or you have to pay somebody every time you need a babysitter.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it's very possible that like Carla was exhibiting attention-seeking behaviors early on. And I mean, it's not as obviously like blatant as Paul, where it's like, no fucking shit, Paul turns out the way he does. Because anyway, so here's something kind of interesting. I don't really know like how significant it is, but apparently when she was a kid, she was like really into Barbie. She was always wearing pink, being a princess. And then as a preteen, she really switched and started becoming very punk-like and only wore black and white. She dyed her hair, and just knowing everything that happened later, kind of makes me want to speculate, like,
I was so punk
what
rock.
caused that shift. Yeah, she became really punk rock. Really
Well, I do. If I were to guess anything, I'd just be like, it's peer groups. It's like who you meet in high school, who
fair.
you find and think is cool in high school. Like,
right.
I changed a lot of style and
that's true.
interests based on peers and who I met and who I thought was cool, and I didn't know that existed before. And
I agree. That's probably what it was, because
that to me seems like the most likely. It's the most obvious, most likely thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and I think it's.
And if you very unfortunately run into a Paul Bernardo when you're in high school, like, God,
yeah, you're fucked.
God help you.
But the thing is, okay, we'll get into it. But even if I was dating a Paul, I would still not fucking be a Carla. So I no, you wouldn't, Madison.
No,
Wait till you hear the shit she does.
True.
So here's something kind of interesting and comes into play a lot later. The childhood friend that is interviewed in Lethal Marriage described Carla as this like extreme animal lover that was like really into like respecting animals. And there's a specific story how as a kid, she told off a group of boys that were like harming a bug. And she was basically like, you cannot harm a life, and animals are to be respected and all this stuff, which very opposite to most serial killers as children.
Yeah.
Very, very different. So I think that's interesting. And her like relationship with animals comes in later. So like I said, Carla's growing up. She's in St. Catharines, Ontario. And at the point that she was in high school, she was this blonde, beautiful girl who got a lot of attention. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think she's
sorry,
like,
I'm being a dick.
No, but like I think it's like interesting because that's like a very key thing in this case. Like a lot of the like coverage of this case really focuses on like, they're so fucking hot. How could they do this?
They're not that hot, you guys.
I mean, I think they're like conventionally really hot, but I think they're horrific fucking people. And it's hard to think they're good looking after knowing what's that behind it all.
Biases.
Yeah, hugely. So she's like blonde, beautiful, whatever. She got a lot of attention from boys, and she would like date guys. I think she had her share of boyfriends, but apparently she would like complain to her friends that like all they want is sex, like all the boys want is sex, and like she was kind of like over it. She wanted more from
relationship, whatever.
Yeah. So she was like relatively popular. She was well liked by like staff and students. She had a really high IQ. She got really good grades. But apparently there was nothing more that she was more passionate about than boys and finding a husband and getting married. That was her number one like thing she talked about at this age. And I think it makes sense because she's probably this like young woman trying to figure out where she fits in, starts getting a ton of attention from guys. Here's something that she can like focus on.
I recently learned about the term trad wife.
I don't know that. What is that?
It is where you want to be like a traditional housewife.
Oh.
But it like sounds kind of cool.
It does sound, it sounds cooler than what it was. I thought it was going to be something else.
So she's seeking that trad wife life.
For sure. She did love animals though. So she like that continued from her childhood, and in high school she had a part-time job at a pet store. So shout out. I also had a part-time job at a pet store.
Woo woo.
Yeah.
You're Carla Homolka.
No. The only thing I want to claim similar to her. Yeah. So let's go back to October 1987. October 17th. Carla was at a pet convention in a hotel in Scarborough, Ontario.
Damn, she was really into it. Pet convention.
Yeah, she was going to a convention because it was like I've been to these. They like do these conventions where like different companies market like the different pet food, and if you work at a store, you go to them and you pick out what you want to select to sell at your store.
I want to go to a reptile convention. They have them.
I've been to so many of those.
Really?
I always come away with a snake though.
I want to go. Next time I go to one, invite me.
I don't know if they still have them now because of like lockdown.
Well,
maybe they
come
do.
Back.
But I used to go to them. They would like hold them monthly in like Mississauga, like near the Toronto airport, and they were really fucking interesting, but kind of shitty because all the reptiles are just in like little takeout containers, and it's very like very commodified. But you learn a ton. It's cool still.
Do you get to touch reptiles?
Oh, for sure, you get to hold all of them.
Nice.
Yeah, they're. I think it's cool, but definitely ethically questionable for like the well-being of the reptiles. But at the same time, we probably give them a better life than they'd have in the
takeout container.
I don't know. My friend, shout out Miles, because I think she listens to this. My friend and roommate, she's told me that she has issues with like the ethics of the exotic animal trade and like owning pets of snakes. So,
she doesn't.
I think my snakes are happy though.
Your snakes are like
They're well
it
taken
depends
care
on the
of.
size of the container, I guess.
Yeah, they have their lives are enriched, and the thing is, like, they fucking get food and they get safety, so I think they're happy. That's all, as far as we know. That's all snakes care about. But anyways, back to what we were talking about.
To get into that
this is
debate.
really going down a different my other passions in life, snakes. Okay, so Carla is at a pet convention, and Lethal Marriage has like this whole story about it, about how she was with a friend, and Carla just like really wanted to party at this age. She really wanted to rebel, and so her and her friend like went out dancing at a club, and they brought home these two men. But I guess like I don't really know what happened. It doesn't go into detail, but I guess they had like an altercation. They wanted the men to leave. I don't know, maybe the men were being creepy, and they ended up having to call like the hotel management to make the guys leave. So this was all happening that night. And once the men left, it was after midnight. So then Carla's like, I'm hungry. Let's get room service. But room service was closed. So they decided to go down to the hotel restaurant. So they're sitting there, apparently eating grilled cheese sandwiches, which, by the way, sounds great right now. I could go for one of those. And they were approached by two men while they were sitting at a table. One man was much more forward. He was tall and blonde, and he instantly started to flirt with Carla by teasing her about being in pajamas. Yeah, this man.
I know who he is.
Paul Bernardo.
Motherfucker.
Yep. And he was also with his friend Val Smyrnis. Shout out Val Smyrnis. They come into the story a little bit later. So every account that I read said that Paul and Carla were like instantly attracted to each other.
Ew.
And as soon as they started talking, it was like nobody else was in the room.
Ew, that's so sickening.
Yeah.
Now, especially.
I know. They were just like, oh, you're disgusting. I'm disgusting.
You're the worst. I'm the worst.
We should be together.
Ew.
So they were talking like really close to each other, ignoring everyone else around them. Carla's friend and Paul's friend are both just like, all right, I guess this is happening. And within an hour, they were in Carla's hotel room having sex after they met. Yeah. From then on, their relationship had begun. Paul was older at 23. Carla was 17, and she was really charmed by her first impression of him. Mm. Yeah. He was this like older guy. He was an up-and-coming accountant.
Cool.
Well, I mean, yeah. I guess it's not that cool, but like, you know,
it's
he had
a real job.
Yeah. And he, like I said before, he was known as a king of first impressions. So the relationship started. Carla, who had gotten a job as an assistant at a vet clinic a few months later, spent most of the money she made on phone calls to Paul while he was living in Scarborough. She was in St. Catharines, so it was a long-distance relationship, or somewhat long distance. It's like a couple hours drive away. And she started writing him letters and cards within a few days after they met, and throughout the course of their relationship, she would send hundreds of letters and cards to Paul. So a lot of them are transcribed in Lethal Marriage. But the first note, which she sent after their first date a few days later, said this: "Hi, Paul. I'm cleaning up my room and just waiting for your call. I hope you want to spend the weekend with me. I can't wait to see you, Carla."
Cool.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Okay. I feel like it's a red flag, though, to just be like, I'm just waiting for your call.
Yeah.
Like, it's already kind of like...
It already shows the dynamic. Like, that's what happens when you're a 17-year-old and you date a 23-year-old.
Yeah, because
like,
she's just in high school.
It just will never be even.
Yeah.
And you will always be, like, the baby of the relationship.
I think ethically there's a lot there.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we live in Canada. The age of consent is 16. So technically it was legal. But I definitely think that that's, like, right there. Huge fucking red flag, the age difference.
And we know at this time, like, he is a predator and
serial
rapist.
He was already raping. So. Yeah, exactly. And
he's
exactly.
Is he already known as a Scarborough rapist? No, okay.
Nobody had connected the attacks
Sorry
at this
to
point.
get ahead of it there.
Yeah.
But the Scarborough rapist was abound at that point. It just, he hadn't been labeled that.
Nobody was connecting the rapes at that point, I don't believe. There was only...
But he, like that was
he was doing it. Yeah. So, yeah, at the beginning of the relationship, it was a long-distance relationship, and Paul would visit Carla at her home in St. Catharines several times per week. He would drive from Scarborough to see her. He would shower her with gifts. He would call her his princess.
Fucking typical.
Yep. She would call him her prince. And he...
Ew, that is just vomitrocious. That's disgusting.
It's vomitrocious. Yeah, it's
Could you imagine if you
Love
dated
you, my
somebody?
Prince. There was a lot of that.
It's one thing for a guy to call a girl a princess. That's disgusting, in my opinion. But, like, to then, like, I would never, ever, ever, like, go up to Chris and be like, It's so gross.
Yeah.
I can't even I don't even say like babe. Like, ooh.
Babe, yeah. This is the tip of the iceberg, so just fucking wait.
I'm gonna vomit.
Yeah. So Paul easily charmed her family on his visits. They all loved him. He was this like handsome, young accountant, up and coming, showering their daughter with gifts, charming them at the dinner table. So, yeah.
Ew.
Relationship has begun. From Paul's perspective, he loved having a younger woman that he could manipulate, especially for his own sexual gratification. And Carla actually seemed like a willing participant.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So in Lethal...
For once.
Yeah, for once. I know, literally. So in Lethal Marriage, it basically said that, like, before Carla, he always had to, like, force himself on women. But meeting Carla, she encouraged, at least initially, she encouraged, like, the sexual shit he was into. And it says that on the second time they had sex, she invited him to handcuff her. And so Paul was basically like, oh shit, you actually seem really interested in these sexual fantasies, so I'm interested in you too. But at this point, their relationship did seem very consensual, other than, like, I would say manipulative as fuck on the part of Paul with the age and the showering with gifts. Like, women or men out there, if they shower you with gifts right away, it's a fucking red flag.
Yes.
Like, if they're giving you a ton of attention right away, charming your family right away, like, making declarations of their love to you, run. It's bad.
Run. Or, like,
or at least wait.
Heavily look into
yeah.
that
At
shit.
least wait before committing, because it's a low-key red flag.
No, it absolutely is.
But it's very common. Like,
especially if it's, like, at a level that's, like, there's no way you could keep that up.
That's true.
There's no way that's your real personality.
That's true. But it's hard to see that because, like, I know for me, the most, like, fucked up guys I've dated all did that stuff at first.
Really?
And then finally I started to recognize a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wait a minute.
It's terrible.
Hang on. Yeah, it wasn't bad, but whatever. But yeah, so Carla's, like, younger. She's inexperienced. She's easily drawn into the fantasy. Paul is this Prince Charming that she wanted to be a trad wife.
Cool lingo.
But on Paul's part, he was able to boss her around, and before long, he would start doing some low-key things. He would arrive late for dates. He would push her a little bit into the sexual acts he wanted. And over time, he would start to tell her how to dress, how to do her hair. He would encourage her to call herself degrading names in the bedroom, despite still calling her, like, a princess and her calling him a prince in all her letters to him. And Paul also began to sleep over at the Homolka household since he was driving long distance. The parents were like, yeah, Angel Paul, you can sleep over. But, like, obviously you're going to sleep in a different bedroom than Carla because you guys are, like, a really great couple and really, like, moral. But obviously he would, like, sneak into Carla's room to have sex with her at night.
Ew.
Yeah, which, I mean, I feel like that's not, I mean,
No, it's just
fine.
gross because they're fucked, but
yeah, it's gross because
in a normal,
it's them. But this,
yeah, that's just normal.
Not raising too many red flags yet. However, here we fucking go. One night after they had sex, I mean, this is just fucking horrible. Yeah. Paul went into the back of the house and he looked in the bedroom window of Carla's sister Tammy, who was 12 at the time. Paul is, I believe, 20. He's 23.
He's 23, yeah.
Tammy is 12.
That's horrific.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Apparently in Lethal Marriage, he had one time, like, while he was visiting, happened to see Tammy undressing, and that, like, really sparked a fascination with poor Tammy.
Do you know if Carla knew that he was doing that at this point?
At this point, one night he had snuck in to her room. I do not believe that she knew.
Right. That he was spying on Tammy.
Yeah. I do not believe she knew, that first time at least. So while Paul and Carla started their relationship, like I said, long distance, so they're not together all the time, just 3 or so times a week, which is still a lot for the 2-hour drive. At this time, Paul couldn't or didn't want to control his predatory urges.
Ew.
Yeah. On December 16th, 1987, Paul committed his 3rd rape in Scarborough. A 22-year-old woman who had just gotten off the bus was assaulted by a man who instructed her not to look at him while he assaulted her in different ways.
So terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
Just minding your own business.
And she kept her eyes down. It says she kept her eyes down the whole time. She didn't want to see him because she was scared of what the fuck he would do to her.
Yeah, man. If you ever get into a situation where somebody tells you not to look, don't.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you can silently do it, but
it's
like,
all bad. Either way, it's all bad, but you might survive more if you don't.
Yeah, at least like they don't, don't let them know that you're looking, because that's what's keeping you alive.
Absolutely horrible. I hope nobody, like, obviously,
but imagine,
some people have to deal with that, but
he is now in this relationship with somebody who finally will do the things that he wants to do.
Right. It wasn't enough. Though.
And that wasn't even enough. He still has to go raping
of course
strangers.
Not.
That's insane.
Because he gets off on the non-consent.
Yeah.
Like, that's what his thing is.
Yeah.
Like, his MO is literally like, I want you to not want it. So he was still pushing Carla around. Like, we'll get more into their relationship because I think the details of their relationship are very, very interesting. So we'll get more into that. But yeah, so that happened. However, afterwards, this woman went to the hospital, like to get like a rape kit done, and she reported her attack at that time.
Is she the first one to report it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Third
successful,
fourth. Yeah.
rape.
Gross. Yeah. But she was the first to report it. She told the detectives what she could about her attacker, which was not much, just that he was a white man around 6 feet tall and 180 pounds. The rapist had worn gloves, leaving no fingerprints. After this attack, the Scarborough police issued an official warning to all women not to travel alone at night.
That's so scary. So
fucking scary. So not even a week later, like 6 days later, I believe, something like that. I'm bad at math. Yeah, I think 6 days later, December 23rd, Paul committed his fourth rape.
Wow, only 6 days.
It's like so soon after. It was at this point, because this one was reported as well, I believe. At this point, the police and the public began to refer to the Scarborough rapist, who was like one man that was being associated with all these crimes.
That's so scary.
Yeah. So this was December, the end of the year of 1987.
Okay.
So now we're in early 1988. In February 1988, Paul began to increase his pressure on Carla into letting him do sexually violent things. He started to pressure her into letting him take sexually explicit pictures of her, which, by the way, I didn't mean to find, but I found, and it was weird because she was really young at the time. Murderpedia, I was just looking at the photo gallery of them two, and it's like, oh, here's photos.
Just pops up.
Yeah, here's photos of Carla and like sexually suggestive photos.
Ew.
Dead eyes and all.
Gross.
Yeah, so I've seen Carla
naked.
naked.
Poor her as a child.
She was young, yeah, 1988. So she would have been 18, but still. Or not quite 18 yet. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
And it sounds not that consensual because Paul would like pressure her into it, from what I read.
And now another question. Did she know that he was out doing those rapes at the time?
Apparently no.
Okay.
From what I know, she did not. I don't know if she suspected him. I don't know. I mean, this was still early in it. He was just in December was when is that right? Yeah, in December was when the police started to. Oh no, sorry. The warning was issued. Yeah, the warning was issued in December after this rape of the woman on the 16th, and then after the 23rd, there was like the talk of the Scarborough rapist.
Okay.
I don't know if Carla suspected him at this point. I'm sure she suspected him later.
Yeah. But
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't just like assume, right?
Yeah.
So there'd need to be some sort of like evidence for
and
you to
she was
think
really,
that
really
boyfriend.
buying into the fantasy of the like Prince Charming situation.
Gross.
And he at that time was still mostly in the phase of just like, look what a great guy I am, showering you with gifts, princess. But he was starting to like put more pressure on her because, like I said, he was like telling her how to do her hair and like, let me take photos of you, blah, blah, blah.
Ooh, like a guy tells you how to do your hair. It's like,
he did a lot of shit like that.
Get out of the bathroom. Like, I'm doing my own hair.
It's weird.
That's so weird.
So he also like became more sexually violent at the time. And Carla would kind of be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this stuff, but I guess I will to please you. And apparently this time, which was around like February, this was the time that Carla later said she first became concerned about Paul's sexual fetishes. So like 4 or 5 months into their relationship, she claims that she was like concerned.
It's concerning.
It's fucking concerning. So he struck again. April 18th, 1988, another rape, another woman followed. kind of similar scenario. Then on May 25th, while he was just creeping out under a tree, a police officer who was in uniform spotted him. The police officer was staking out a bus shelter.
For that reason?
I assume, yes. And the police officer pursued him on foot, but he escaped. So,
damn.
Fuck, could have caught him right then. Yeah. So 5 days later, on May 30th, he committed his 6th rape, this time about 25 miles away from Scarborough.
So he like had the foresight to
He
be
must
like,
have known.
they're watching
Yeah.
me here, I better go
He's
do
in,
it
yeah, the
elsewhere.
they don't know it's him, and probably he has so much, like, what's the word? Not confidence, but, like, delusion that he's like, oh, I can get away with this. Look how great, like, I'm getting away. So that was May 30th, and it wasn't until months later, on October 4th, 1988, was when he attempted a 7th rape, but his intended victim again fought him off. And so he, like, fled with, I believe, like, scratches on his face. So getting back to his relationship with Carla, it was sometime in the early fall of October 1988 when he first became physically abusive to Carla. Slapping her after she refused a sexual act, which, can I just say what it was?
Yes, please.
Something involving wearing a dog collar during sex.
Oh my God.
And she didn't want to do it.
So he slapped her in the face?
So he slapped her, yeah, I believe in the face, yeah. Jeez. And as soon as he did it, she was, like, shocked. And then he immediately became very gentle and very apologetic.
Oh, that is so classic.
Fucking typical. And just, like...
That's like Rush.
Yeah. Immediately after,
it's
he's
such,
like
predatory
They always
behavior.
do it because it's such a mind fuck. It's like, oh no, but I'm this, like, great guy. Let me comfort you. Oh, you're hurt. Let me comfort you. But it's like, you're the one who fucking did it.
Yeah.
And not taking accountability.
From you.
Yeah. So that was the first time, October 1988. First time he hit her, apologetic. The next time he did it, he was not nearly as apologetic.
Wow,
so
he gave up on that
fucking
fast.
Escalated. Yep. So they were on a trip to Florida together. Apparently, Paul had convinced Carla to, like, lie to her parents, saying that they're visiting Paul's grandparents in, like, somewhere in Ontario, which I have to say, like, the book made it seem like, well, Paul pressured her into lying about a trip about Florida. I'm like,
I'm sure she
probably didn't have a
super
problem.
down.
Yeah, like, she's 17. I mean, he seems like he's kind of a piece of shit. There are red flags, but at the same time,
she must
more
be
good
18
than bad.
by this point, no? It's the next year, and it's like, did you say it was October?
It was October 19. Yeah. So she would have been 18, yeah. But she was still in high school, yes. So, the book's like Paul was pressuring her to lie. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I kind of feel like
things I doubt that
exactly.
would require a lot of pressure.
That was the only thing where I was like, well. So anyways, they're in Florida together, and Paul decided to buy a new video camera.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, this comes up a lot later.
Yeah.
So he was, like, asking Carla to film him in the shower, but he was like, you're doing it wrong. You're such an idiot. Like, let me just do it. So he was, like, kind of becoming, like,
a weirdo.
Yeah, like, no, Paul, nobody wants to fucking see this shit. He's very American Psycho, which also apparently was, like, his Bible. He, like, loved American Psycho.
Oh, that is not
Shocker.
surprising.
He's very, like, in the mirror.
Ew, that's such a,
That is him, right?
Yes.
What's his name? Bates?
Well,
yeah.
That's the actor. But
Thank you, though. Wow,
it's not Norman Bates.
Is it Norman Bates?
No, I'm getting it all mixed up. American Psycho. Aidan, can you look it up?
We need to know his name.
Aidan's
was Paul's idol. I think it, like, in somewhere I read it's talked about later how that was, like, legit his idol, and he, like, would read out passages of the book like the Bible. American Psycho, by the way, one of the books I read that I was very, like, sickened by.
I never read the book. I just watched
the book is way worse than the movie.
Really?
Way worse.
I kind of want to read
There's, like, mutilations of a woman's body by rats, and it's described, like, how he puts, like, rats on her body and shit.
Iceman Killer.
The character is Patrick Bateman.
Bateman.
Who's Norman Bates then?
Norman Bates is the Bates Hotel is
Oh, that's based on Psycho though, not
Psycho,
American Psycho. But I think they were all named after each other.
Yeah.
So he's very that.
Yeah.
So he's asking Carla to film him in the shower, and he's like getting mad at her for doing it wrong or whatever. So he's like, just fucking give me the camera and let me do it.
What a weirdo.
So Carla's like, okay. So she's passing him the camera, but she dropped it and shattered it by accident.
Ooh, I bet that didn't go well for her.
Did not fucking go well. So Paul was furious. He lunged at her from the shower and kicked her and punched her, knocking her to the floor. The attack continued for several minutes. When he finally helped her up, he said, "You really are a stupid cunt, you know? You're nothing without me."
And this must be like her account
I think it is.
later.
That's what I'm wondering, because a lot of this stuff, like, and we'll get into all of this later, but one of the biggest controversies about this case was how much was Carla a victim of Paul and how much was she a willing participant. And so if this is Carla's perspective, then it should be taken. Yeah, it should be, because we will get into it later, but it is very questionable how willing participant she was based on, like, again, we'll get into it all later. But
anything that's her account, I just think is so...
You got to question it.
So questionable.
So I, 100% will accept that Paul was abusing Carla and that she was a victim of him. However, it's questionable to what extent was she a victim. It's questionable.
And especially specific instances where she's like, he said this to me, like, maybe.
And maybe, like we've talked about in other cases, in the heat of the moment, maybe she remembered it wrong. So it's hard to say, but that's...
We'll take it as like that's
what we have documented from Lethal Marriage. And so now it's like fall of 1988. Around this time, Paul was really fucking switching it up. She was no longer his, like, princess in public. He had been demeaning her, like, or encouraging her to demean herself, like, in the bedroom pretty much from the beginning. And there's all these letters that she wrote to him, which are just so fucking cringy. I didn't really write them all down or many of them down, but it would just be like,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm your slut. Like, I'm your, like, whatever. Like, that kind of stuff, which, okay, like, maybe it was consensual, but to the world, she was his princess. But at this point, he was switching it up where he was like, you're a bitch, you're a cunt. And he was even saying that stuff, like, in front of her friends. And he started to make her, again, I don't know, is this Carla's account? I don't know. Apparently, he started to make her write herself reminders of how dumb she was. And he taped, like, so much mental abuse. And she taped one of these notes to the door of her bedroom, which read, "Remember, you're stupid. Remember to think before you speak."
Oh, my God.
I feel like this is very Rosh. Do you remember how his followers write letters, be like, "Oh, my God, I'm sorry, I'm so fat.
Yeah, I ate too much today.
I'm just not good enough. I'm too fat." It's, like, disgusting, honestly. Like, I'm saying it in a somewhat of a joking way, but it's extremely fucked up.
No, that's like extremely abusive.
Yeah, it really is, especially Carla being this, like, young, unestablished woman. Because at that age, it's like, how can you really have much self-confidence? I guess unless you're, like, excelling at a sport or something. It's like, what do you have in your life that gives you confidence? And Carla's main thing was kind of like, she's this hot girl that's, like, desirable to men, and now she has this picture perfect, allegedly man, questionably, debatably. Anyway, so it's just fucked. And all this time, Carla kept writing Paul notes while she was, like, saying, like, "Oh, I'm your little slut," and whatever. And in the same letter being like, "I want to marry you. Your wish is my command. Thank you for making my life so wonderful," in between, like, all these, like, sexual promises to him.
Ew, that's so weird.
It's so weird. There's a lot of letters written. Most of them are really short. They're in Lethal Marriage. And I guess this was pre-texting, so.
Yeah. It's just, like, crazy to imagine you writing, like, 3 sentences and, like, mailing it and, like, getting a stamp. Like, it's just, that's a lot.
That's how you had to do it.
Yeah.
So, November 16th, Paul commits his 7th rape.
Jesus.
Once again, creeping on a woman at night, accosting her, assaulting her, like, sodomizing her, threatening her with a knife was one of his things. The next day, November 17th, the Metro Police formed a special task force purely dedicated to capturing the Scarborough rapist.
Finally.
So,
that took a while.
It took a fucking while. But I think at that point, they were like, all right, we got to do it. I know. I guess, like, because nobody had really, like, any, like, not to say useful, but, like, any, like, significant identification for him, they just, like, didn't have anything to go on.
Yeah,
but at this point, they were
do
like,
is, like, chill at bus stops.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they were kind of doing something. But so, December 27th, which was about a month and 10 days later, Paul was actually seen attempting to rape a woman by a neighbor who saw him, like, go up behind a woman. And this neighbor, like, cried out, but she didn't see him. She just, I guess, like, maybe saw through a window a woman getting assaulted.
If it was dark.
It was dark, exactly. It was always, all his rapes were all at night. And so, again, he just ran off. He got away. So 1989 begins, and Paul bought Carla a pre-engagement or a promise ring which she instantly went around showing to all her friends.
Cute.
He got me a promise ring. Because Carla was nearing her graduation, and she started talking about going to university for criminology and becoming somebody who studied criminals and predators.
Well, if that is not
We've got one right here.
freaking ironic, then was that even irony? Like,
Yeah,
that's-
super fucking ironic. So Paul, of course, was like, Carla, don't become a cop. Like, no, don't do that.
Carla, I'm a criminal.
Yeah.
I'm a rapist.
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
God.
like, it's so weird. So it's kind of speculated that like Paul got her that ring to be like, don't become a cop,
Or-
become my trad wife.
Yeah, and to be like, don't go educate yourself.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you are blind to the red flags, so don't figure them out. But yeah, so Carla was happy with the ring, allegedly, and she forgot about university. She forgot about becoming a criminologist. That's the right word for it. And she reverted back to her dreams of becoming married and starting a family. Early in 1989, this is important to note for later events, Paul also leased a new vehicle, a brand new gold Nissan 240 SX, license plate 660 HFH. So that comes into play later, so I thought I would mention. At this point in their relationship, early 1989, Paul had pretty much complete control over Carla, from what we know. He would dictate what she wore, who she saw, and what she did. And apparently she was sometimes uncomfortable with like how jealous he was. Like they were at a party one time and one of Carla's exes were there, and Paul just like started a fight with him, even though there was like a bunch of guys there to like defend the friend or the ex. So Paul was like kind of embarrassing Carla by starting like a drunken brawl.
I cannot imagine what I would do if some guy I was dating was like, you're wearing this.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I know. I think it's like, I mean, I'm sure he didn't say it like that, but I'm sure he was like, you'd look so pretty in this. Like,
Or like, you're not wearing that.
yeah, like I'm sure he did it in a sneaky and like convincing way. And also Carla like wanted to be attractive to him. So she had like the incentive to be like, yeah, Paul, tell me what to do. You're cool.
Yeah. You're so cool.
Oh, Paul, you're awesome. I love your
Rap for
rapping.
me.
Rap for me. Imagine him just like rapping to her. One time I had this boyfriend when I was like 15 and he would like play guitar for me. And it wasn't that bad, but it's like awkward when you're just there and a guy's playing guitar for you. It's like you're just sitting there.
Ooh.
But imagine
That's
Carla.
that's real.
It was weird.
I just like that's so cringy.
It was weird.
I have
yeah.
a friend who an ex of hers has been sending songs that he's wrote and performed
Which is weird, but at least she doesn't have to sit and like acknowledge it.
and be like, good job.
Yeah, like what do you do? Do you like clap? Do you sing along? It's weird. Imagine Carla being like, Paul, rap for me.
And you
Gross.
just sit there and listen. It's like, what do you do with your hands?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. You're just kind of like, yeah, that was great. But yeah, so as much as like Paul has like all this control over her, for the most part, Carla would like tell her friends she's super happy with him. She has this like strong man in her life. I don't know. So
Super cool.
yes, super cool guy.
Rapper.
It's kind of the same like pattern repeating itself of on the surface, things seem great. Look a little deeper,
It's
not so great. Yeah. So at this point, it's pretty fucking obvious that there was a power imbalance in the relationship. One thing that I read in Lethal Marriage, based on what psychiatrists said, they were saying that like they think that Carla was drawn to an overly dominating man because she was raised in a household with mostly women, with mom and two sisters, and wanted more of a male presence in her life.
interesting.
Speculation, I don't really know, because people like the psychiatrists say like Paul is textbook. Like
Yeah.
of course.
Absolutely.
But Carla, not so much.
Yeah. It's
So-
true. She is definitely like,
She seems like an anomaly based
Yeah.
on what we know. So we can only guess, but I'm assuming, and like based on my experience, it's only like I said, I dated some shitty guys. I think that as a young woman, it's pretty easy to be influenced by an older man, especially if they're like experienced in manipulating women.
this whole case reminds me so much of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, I think
Right.
is her name. Besides the fact that Myra Hindley was described as being like
Not attractive.
super ugly.
Yeah.
Rude, but that's how she was described. But the dynamic to me sounds so similar.
Yeah. I don't know that much about that case. When I told you I was researching this one, you mentioned that one to me and that there's a lot of parallels. And I think that like overall, this is a dynamic that's like, I mean, I've been in that type of relationship, like obviously not with a murderer that I know of, but like a similar situation. And I feel like it's very common. And it's like, obviously, like a lot of people are from toxic backgrounds and they come together because like it's replicating like things that they're familiar with or whatever. So I do think it's like a common pattern, but it does seem like this isn't the only like serial killer couple.
Yeah, and I mean specifically like
Them
the
specifically.
murdering aspect
Yeah.
and like
the
the
videotaping.
Yeah, I don't know if Ian, Brady, and Myron
think they did.
Did they? I don't remember.
There was some other couple that videotaped. It might have been Fred and Rosemary West. I don't really know.
I don't remember, but just like the being sorry.
The
Like,
dynamic of it.
the dynamic of doing like trying to find young girls and like he
Yeah.
like wants to rape them and she's like
Yes.
yeah fine
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like happy that we'll get into it but
I know. It's interesting that this isn't the only case like that.
yeah
Because I think like a lot, it's like kind of like in a bad way, but like the perfect storm, like all these things
Yeah,
coming
for
together.
sure.
Because like, again, we'll get into it, but Paul didn't murder anyone until him and Carla were pretty seriously together. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So anyways, 1989, at this point, Carla's close to graduating, although her schoolwork has like really started to suffer, which
not surprising.
oh yeah, not surprising. I can only assume it's because she's like stressed and just like obsessed with Paul. But still, all she would talk about were the gifts she was receiving from the older man she was dating. That's all her friends would hear about.
And I'm sure all her friends were like, oh my god, that's so cool.
I mean, yeah, I think like the friend that was described in Lethal Marriage was kind of like, that's kind of weird, but I'm happy for you. Like they were kind of like, well, it's kind of weird, but do your thing. So in her 1989 graduating yearbook, she wrote, "My wildest dream is to marry Paul and to see him more than twice a week." Dream big.
Yeah.
Under
Your
the
wildest dream.
Yeah,
Thank God.
whoa. Dream a little smaller, actually. So under the heading, I don't know what the fuck these headings are, but under the heading, "My chief distraction," she wrote, "A certain chartered accountant in Toronto." Okay. And under the heading, "My greatest influence in life," she simply wrote, "Paul." Cool.
Oh god.
Yeah. Like it's sad because she's so like young at this point. And just like she like clearly doesn't really know that she has anything else going for her.
Well, yeah, it's like she gave up like all her ambitions and
Yeah.
everything that she could have done in her life just to like be
Wife and
obsessed with
kids
a
are
literal rapist.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Right. So I'm assuming she graduated around like probably June 1989. Paul had last committed a known rape on November 17th, and he had tried it again on December 27th, but he was seen. And because there was a police task force, I can only assume maybe he took a break because of that. I don't know. But it wasn't until August 15th, 1989, that Paul committed his 8th rape.
Damn, that's so many rapes.
It's a lot. In not that long of a time, 2-year span. So a little bit over a 2-year span. And some were attempted. And maybe some we don't even know about.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the thing.
very possible.
Yeah.
There could be like 10 more.
Yeah, that's one of the things in this case later on, like we'll get into it, but people speculate that there was more than we know about, which
there
is very
has to
easy.
be.
Yeah. Because these were the known instances. And obviously, like a lot of women only, like they didn't report it at the time, but they only came forward later.
Yeah.
And then like kind of like the pieces of the events can be pieced together from that. But
There's so many reasons you wouldn't want to like just bring that into your life.
Right. Exactly. Because if you have no evidence, it's like the trauma of having to relive it and like.
And then maybe like you're married now and like you don't want the guy to know because you don't want him to think something of you,
Yeah.
which like maybe wouldn't be true, but maybe it would be. And it's a complicated thing to bring into your life when you could just sit quietly.
Yeah, or maybe they're in denial. So it wasn't until August 15th, 1989, that Paul committed his 8th known rape. He stalked a 22-year-old woman from outside of her window the night before, and then that night waited for her to arrive home. Fucking hate that.
It's just, yeah. I mean, we've said it, but like.
I'm never
Just
fucking taking the bus.
Yeah.
Ever again at night.
And
So
this
one of
is
my
why,
pit bulls.
yeah, this is why when I remember when I was like a teenager and my parents were like, well, we're not letting you walk home at night by yourself. And I'm like, why?
I walked home. I don't think my parents knew about this because I always walked home.
Oh, well, I don't.
Actually, my mom would pick me up a lot, but shout out, Mom. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. I know, but I remember they let Aidan walk home by himself, but not me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm older than him. Blah, blah.
That
They're
was like my brother,
we
too.
think you're going to get raped.
Yeah.
Like,
They were like, my parents were like, it's because you're a girl. And I was like, but why? Girls are just as good as boys. But no, like, that's not, they just didn't want to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, shout out to our parents for like giving a shit. No, not that these, I mean, this woman was 22. It's like, exactly. You know. So also interesting to note, all his victims around this time, I believe, well, I'll say it now, but so far most of his victims have been in the 18 to 22 range.
Yeah, a lot of like 22s.
Yeah. So apparently this was a particularly violent attack and lasted over 2 hours.
Oh, God.
Yeah, horrific. And it's like he didn't have any known rapes in between then and November, like the year before. So it's almost a year later, like close to a year later. So I assume that maybe he was like taking out extra rage, like a pent up amount of rage, because some of the others it was like this assault lasted for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, but 2 hours
that's intense
of torture.
I mean, even 45 minutes of like
anything is bad. 2 seconds is fucking bad, any of it.
Horrible.
So that was August. Then November 21st, he committed his 9th rape against a 15-year-old girl who saw at a bus shelter.
My God.
Yeah, so he just accosted her, raped her, threatened her with a knife, the usual. So at some point in December 1989, about 14 months after they first met, Paul proposed to Carla at Niagara Falls. So
wow, that's so romantic.
Very romantic. Yeah. Of course, she said yes, and they decided that their wedding was going to be in the spring, early summer of 1991.
Her wedding dress was so funny. It was
very
poofy.
frilly, right? Yeah.
It was so poofy.
Yeah, the wedding, there's some fucking crazy shit about the wedding. So, we will get there. Don't you worry. So, of course, Carla's family was thrilled that she was marrying Paul, who they loved.
That's insane. Like, he basically stopped her from furthering her education.
Yeah.
And
he's like, fucking abusing her. He's telling her, making her write notes to herself about how stupid she is. He's like sexually abusing her, I'm pretty sure. He's going around raping people.
And spying on their younger daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. So far, it was only written that he had done that one or a couple times, but yeah. That's enough. That's why did I even say that? That's enough. But yeah, so family's super happy. Can't wait to welcome Paul Bernardo into the family. He's a great guy. On December 22nd, Paul committed his 10th known rape against...
Jesus, so many rapes.
It's just fucking going on and on. And there is a task force out there, but they don't have, like, any leads on him. So Paul's getting pretty fucking confident and keeping up with it. Wow. So this rape was against a 19-year-old woman who was in the stairwell of an underground parking lot, which is one of the scariest places.
Underground parking lots
no
are
cell phone
so
service,
scary.
No cell phones at this time. But yeah, that's like one of the most murdery places, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah. So that happened. And also around this time, like after they were engaged, things started to take a really bad turn in his relationship with Carla. Like, I mean, not that, well, just a very significant for what happened later. He started to tell her that he believed a man should be able to have multiple women as his partners.
I love when they come up with that.
Yeah. And he wanted first to have a threesome with Carla and someone else.
I'm sure she was like not thrilled about that.
Well, I don't think she was. And Carla asked, "Who do you have in mind?" He told her, "Your sister, Tammy Lynn."
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's disgusting.
To her face. Like, the audacity.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
I know. How would that make you feel?
Just pure disgust.
It's like so wrong on so many levels.
There's so much wrong with that scenario.
Like, he's just like, Carla, bend over backwards for me and fucking accept this. Like, the audacity to be like, Carla, yeah, this is like,
this is what I want.
I'm gonna want to have sex with you and your sister, who was like 14 or 15 at the time.
Because now Carla's getting older, so he's like over it.
God, just, yeah, that's, yeah. Basically, like, he was like saying, I don't know if it was here or a little bit later where he started to say, like, Carla, you weren't a virgin when you met me, but Tammy's a virgin, so I, like, am owed her. Like, if you couldn't give me your virginity, then I want Tammy's virginity.
That's horrible.
How fucked up is that? And so wrong. And like, how would that make Carla feel? You know what I mean? Like, I cannot imagine that would make her feel secure and good in their relationship.
No, how would that make you feel anything besides pure trash?
Yeah. Just like, all I have is Paul. The only hope for my future is marrying him. And so anyways, I'll get more into it, but absolutely disgusting.
That's foul.
So listen to this. Before long, Carla had agreed that she would wear Tammy's clothes and role play as Tammy in the bedroom in an attempt to appease Paul, which did seem to satisfy him for a few months.
That is just repulsive.
How fucking weird and gross, and just like, no, I don't like that. I feel like there's a line. You have crossed the line at this point.
I think he crossed the line a long time ago. But
That's true, but that's true. He crossed the line way fucking long time ago. What am I even saying?
Ugh.
But that is just like, there's another line and you cross that one too. So that was kind of like late 1989, early 1990. Carla's pretending to be Tammy while she has sex with Paul. Details described in Lethal Marriage. I read them. They are in my brain forever now. Then on May 26th, 1990, Paul committed his 11th known rape. Yeah. However, this time, the woman he was following noticed him before he assaulted her. So he like talked to her briefly and was kind of like, hey, nice night. And she was like, oh, this is a nice looking guy. He can't be sketchy. But then he forced himself on her. But she'd seen him and she talked to him. So after he raped her, which is also like, you're so fucking cocky at this point.
yeah, if you think you can get away
Like,
with that.
he really believes in this, like, deadly innocence persona where he's like, I look like a nice guy. No one's gonna... Anyways, after he raped her, she went to the police and she gave them enough information to make a computer composite photograph, which was released 2 days later by police and published in local newspapers. Let me just show it to you.
Please.
And we'll put it up on the screen as well. So... well, that's not the best quality image, but that was the computer composite photograph. That's Paul. I think
It's pretty good.
there's a resemblance,
Yeah,
for
there
sure.
is. He looks younger in the comic.
I think, and that photo is later. Like, that photo was, I believe, when he was arrested, which was later.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why they put those. Sorry, the one that I'm showing shows side to side, but we'll show the photograph. It does.
It's pretty good.
There's a resemblance,
Yeah.
for sure. So this photo, so this is May, early June of 1990, and there's this photo out there now that's like, this fucking looks like Paul, and it's out there. So time moves on, and during the summer of 1990, Paul's obsession with Tammy Homolka continued to grow. Great. So now he wanted Carla to have sex with him in Tammy's bedroom, all while pretending to be her, like every time. And then he started going into Tammy's room when she wasn't there and masturbating on her pillow while looking at photos of her, which he escalated to then doing the same fucking masturbation on her pillow while she was asleep. And
What?
Yeah, Tammy was asleep and she never woke up when this happened. And later he told Carla about it, which, like, this guy has the most fucking audacity.
That is just
Like, Carla, guess what I did?
So much.
It's so much.
And
It's nothing compared to what happened. So it's just disgusting.
oh,
like,
God.
this poor
I
girl.
can see how this is going to be intense.
Yeah, and you can see how, like, he's, like, creating this, like, issue with Carla, feeling like, Carla, you're trash. I want your sister.
Yeah.
And Carla has nothing else but Paul, so she just, like, desperately wants to cling to the shattered dreams of their, like, perfect relationship.
that is so fucked up.
Yeah, and Carla was, like, said to be pretty close with her family. Like, they got along well. She liked her sisters. But can't imagine this is doing good things for their dynamic.
No.
Yeah.
And I imagine she must have, like, started being, like, such a dick to Tammy, like, after that. And, like, Tammy's probably like, what the hell?
I bet you. Like, I mean, so we'll continue. So Paul, like I said, he started to demand that Carla pretend to be Tammy every time they had sex, which, like, what the fuck? Carla continued to go along with it, but Paul had started openly flirting with Tammy at the time as well, like, directly to her. And she was around 15 at the time, I assume 14, 15. Paul was around 25. So
That is
that's
such a
disgusting. Yeah, it's such a mindfuck, right? Like, it's one thing for him to be like, oh, like, I mean, he was raping women, like, behind her back, as far as we know, behind her back.
Yeah.
But it's one thing for him to be, like, necessarily, like, wanting to cheat on her, but it's, like, with your sister, who is younger than you, who's, like, she's a virgin and you're not. Like, there's so many levels to the disgustingness and unfairness and just, like, shittiness of Paul. And just, like, his I want to say like narcissism is the right word for this, where it's like
I'm pretty sure
he
that's
thinks
what it
that
is.
like he can just do all of this. Because also Tammy's not fucking really consenting. I mean, the whole family loved Paul. So they all thought Paul was this great guy. So he's like flirting with her, but only Karla really knows that he's shitty because the mask never slipped yet around the family. Yeah. So Paul would drive Tammy to her soccer games. He would videotape her playing, and he would say like in the videos, "You're so athletic, Tammy, and your sister's so clumsy. Like Karla's such a fucking piece of shit, and you're great."
Ew.
So obviously Karla,
and then I bet show Karla the video.
Probably, or like say it in front of her. So obviously Karla began to feel jealous of Tammy. Obviously. One night in the summer of 1990, Paul drove Tammy across the border to buy alcohol. Not really sure why they did that, but that. And on the way back, they were like drinking a little bit and they stopped in a parking lot. And Paul later admitted to Karla, "Yeah, we like hooked up. I kissed Tammy." Because I think he got her a little drunk and he was probably just like, "I'm your charming older brother, Paul. Let me just like super like manipulate you into this."
That is so...
It's so gross. And like Tammy was probably so impressionable. She really looked up to Paul. She thought he was this great guy and he probably got her like a little drunk and stuff. So Karla was understandably very angry. And as Paul was like telling her that she should let him take Tammy's virginity to make up for Karla not being a virgin when they met, which is just like, get the fuck out of here.
That
like
makes me so angry.
It's so annoying. Like, you are disgusting. Don't do, like, God. Okay. But it was like ever since he was 16 or whatever, he started to feel like women were just like his pawns in his disgusting games. So also gross, the idea of like taking virginity and like that, you
that's
know,
just such a cringy, like,
it's disgusting. And it does not dictate your value, everyone out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at this point, like Karla would be like, no. Like she was completely refusing. But I just think it's very interesting that Paul felt that he could do this. He could creep on Tammy. He could hook up with her. He could rub it in Karla's face and continue to demand that Karla allow this, all while having complete confidence that, Karla, you're not going to expose me. You're not going to leave me. I've got you like under my thumb.
Yeah.
Like it really speaks to the dynamic of their relationship. Because even if Karla was like, oh, whatever, Paul like is kind of creepy, but like I'll allow it because I know he's this like sexual man and like I'm like the girl that's going to satisfy him. Like, I don't know. The letters are weird. Man. I don't know. The letters are like really creepy and weird, but like it's just, it says a lot about how much like Paul knew that Karla was going to stay with him. And I feel like it's kind of sad to me. Anyways, we'll get into it. Like, it's kind of sad that Karla still wanted to stay with him.
Oh, it's
like, what does that say about how
sad.
she felt about herself, right?
Yeah,
like,
you must have
she must have felt
very low
about
as
yourself.
Fuck.
Yeah. So, and again, it's like
very similar to his father's relationship with his mother.
Exactly. And it's like Paul felt so shitty as a kid because his dad was so evil and his mom was like so defeated. And now like Karla's in that same position essentially that like Paul's mom was in, being just like beaten down by this guy. And it's just like a really fucked up cycle. But here's what's kind of interesting. So like in terms of psychologically and what I read. So apparently Paul was very, very persistent. Obviously he's like making her role play as Tammy, which what the fuck, Karla? Like that already is just like, why did you agree to that? But I guess she was trying to save the relationship. So Karla's refusing, like, you can't fuck Tammy. That's not happening. And then, but apparently like the psychiatrists later were like describing Karla as displaying, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, moral vacuity, like more like lack of morals, because she didn't really seem to care about like Tammy's feeling about this situation and how Tammy would feel if Paul had sex with her. She was really only concerned about how it would affect her.
Yeah.
And her main concern was what her parents would think if they ever found out about Paul's interest in Tammy, because she knew it would mean the end of her marriage plans and her perfect happily ever after.
It's all about her.
Right. Which is interesting, especially knowing what happens later.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like, wouldn't you think that she would want to protect her little sister?
You'd think.
Or have like maybe loyalty to her younger sister?
But then she would have to admit that like that her boyfriend is a predator. So
Right.
maybe if she's trying to make it seem like
deeply in denial.
like you could also think of it as like she thinks Paul is so great that like in her opinion, like Tammy would only be so lucky.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, in her like letters to him, that's what she says. Very similarly to in the letters that like the cult members and the Anthill kids wrote, "You're God, you're amazing." Like, do they really believe it, or are they saying it to appease him, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's hard to know.
It's
you can't be
really
inside
fucking
somebody's
hard
head.
to know. So this is all happening. Like Paul's like being like, "I made out with Tammy, and I'm really want to have sex with her, and you're gonna let me." Carla's like, "No," but their relationship had continued, but it did become strained at this point. And July, shockingly, things weren't all great. And July of 1990 was the first month in the 3 years that Paul and Carla knew each other that she didn't write him any love notes. So it kind of like, this was a point, like, this was a low point, I guess. Well,
sure.
God, not low compared to what happened later, but at the time, this was like a low point. In Lethal Marriage, it describes that they had more physical altercations where there was like scenarios where Paul would like hit Carla and be physically abusive towards her. There was one scenario where she hit him back, and obviously he did not take kindly to that. And I believe it was like somewhere where he initiated and she was like fighting back. Yeah. And Paul continued to detail his plans to rape Tammy. He was like talking to Carla, but in detail saying, "Hey, Carla, we should drug and sedate Tammy." And she wouldn't even know what happened. She wouldn't even know. It would be over in a few minutes. You wouldn't even know. We should just do it that way.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And according to Lethal Marriage, he actually practiced drugging Tammy's friends' drinks with Valium, like when they were over, just to be like, "How much would I need to sedate one of you?"
And would they like, what does Valium do? Would they like
I think
pass
it just
out?
makes them pass out. And then apparently, like, one of the times, one of the friends noticed like a weird white powder in their drinks and didn't want to drink it, or the bitter taste or something. So Paul was like, "Okay, can't use Valium. I'm going to need a different method."
Jesus.
Yeah.
Experimenting on, that's so
on the friends
creepy.
too, which that comes into play later too. These like young, like unassuming girls. So Carla all the while kept refusing. "No, Paul, you're not going to have sex with Tammy. I do not consent." Because I guess Paul really wanted Carla to agree to this. Maybe that's part of his power trip that he's on. Because he probably could have just drugged her and raped her, but he wanted like Carla like to be involved. Or maybe he was like, "Carla, me humiliating you is really gonna like take this to the next level of like pleasure for him." I don't know. And Carla continued making wedding plans. So their wedding was set for the year following. Carla's like deep in the plans.
Probably loving it.
I mean,
And just like trying to deny that everything else is
yeah,
happening.
yeah. Like, what flowers am I gonna have? Which is insane.
Picking out the shittiest dress in the world.
Yeah, I kind of like the dress.
This dress is so big.
I
You
like
like
it.
it? Would
I
you
don't
wear a
know.
dress like that to your wedding?
No, but it's kind of like how I like Drag Race. Like, it's like extra and I like it.
Yeah, but it's
Like, I think it's funny.
It's hilarious.
It's funny, yeah.
But
I like it for that.
Fair enough.
I need to take another look at it. I actually
Again.
don't really remember what it looks like.
Beauty in the eye.
Yeah. It's my style.
Is it your style?
I
I don't think
know.
it's
I don't
your
think
style.
it is. Yeah.
It's not your
It's
style.
definitely not. So Carla kept refusing, and she continued making wedding plans. Around this time, in the summer of 1990, Paul had actually become unemployed. So he was laid off at his job. I've read differing accounts. I have read something saying like because he had like a past of smuggling cigarettes, he was making more money doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of like, "Fuck you" to this job, and like,
Just kept smuggling cigarettes.
yeah, he was like, "I make money doing this and I don't have to like put on a facade of being a good guy." So I'm not sure
All right.
exactly how it coincided. I'm not sure if he was fired. I'm not sure if he quit. I'm not sure if I believe he actually was receiving unemployment checks for a period,
Okay.
but he might have still been smuggling cigarettes at the same time. Like I said, summer of 1990, Paul was unemployed, and Carla had a new job at a vet clinic in St. Catharines. Or I believe she was already working at a vet clinic, but now she got a different job at a different vet clinic where she had more responsibilities.
Damn.
Carla's duties included preparing animals for surgery, and she was trained in using an ether-like substance called halothane to anesthetize them.
Oh, no.
So she was trained in anesthesia.
No.
Yeah. And she was also in charge of keeping track of the drugs that were used at the vet clinic.
No.
So could not imagine anybody worse tasked with that job.
Jesus
Yep.
Christ.
Yeah. So You will see why I mentioned that later.
Only because I know what happens later.
Yeah.
Fuck.
You will see why I mentioned that. So, meanwhile, summer of 1990, somebody who knew Paul, actually, several people who knew Paul, had recognized him from the composite photo that the police had put out. I mean, it fucking looks like him.
Yeah, and it tracks.
Yeah, exactly. So, at the time, police had already taken more than 130 suspects' DNA samples. So they had a ton of samples from like potential Scarborough rapists. And from what I've heard at the time, the testing process was very slow.
Yeah.
So the majority of these samples were sitting on shelves for like months and years at a time, just waiting to be tested. It was in June of 1990 that they first got a tip that the man they were looking for was Paul. I believe this one was by somebody who had worked with Paul and just remembered him like talking about women in sexually aggressive ways and was like, hey, that photo sure looks a lot like Paul, and Paul gives me bad vibes. In Lethal Marriage, there's a few like stories of different people where like just men got bad vibes from him from like how creepy he was towards women. So I believe it was one of those men. The second tip was by a woman named Tina Smyrnis, who was the wife of one of Paul's closest friends. So if you recall, Paul was at the hotel when he met Carla with a man named Val Smyrnis, who is one of, I believe, 3 Smyrnis brothers. So Paul would hang around quite a bit with the Smyrnises. And Tina was married to one of the brothers named Alex. So Tina called in the tip, basically saying, like, I know that Paul is, like, kind of fucking creepy. He talks about weird sexual, like, he talks in sexually explicit ways in a not appropriate context. I mean, maybe it's never appropriate. I don't know. But that photo sure looks like him. So she got her husband Alex on the phone, and he started to explain to the police how Paul frequently talked explicitly about his sex life and his fetishes for dominating women. However, Alex was really awkward in describing this. He was really uncomfortable, like, saying this information, and so apparently he was very stilted in the way he was describing it. He seemed hesitant, he seemed unsure, and so the detectives weren't so sure that Paul was their guy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I believe there had been a few like people saying, hey, Paul, I think this is Paul. And then Tina and Alex kind of like talked a bit later. So it was in November 20th, specifically 1990, where Paul was officially brought in and interviewed by detectives. So I'm not sure if it was because of Alex's call, because it seems like the police were kind of put off by it, but whether or not that was the final straw, they found Paul and they called him in because they're like, okay, a couple people are implicating you. You look like the photo. Let's interview this guy. Yeah. So the interview lasted 35 minutes. And during it, Paul agreed voluntarily to give samples for forensic testing, which is like interesting to me that he would agree to that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're the guy.
He would be like, no, or like be like, I need a
fuck
lawyer.
You. Yeah. But he did admit to the detective. Oh my God, I can't talk. After like 2 hours, my voice is like, oh. He admitted to the detectives that he did actually look like the composite image. He said, yeah, it does resemble me. But he was so friendly, so cooperative, and he was this well-educated, like, white, seriously, guy. And so the police were like, I don't think he would do this.
There's no way.
Yeah, like, he's so nice and white and educated. So nice. It doesn't seem like he could do this.
That's terrible.
And they were like, I mean, he seems like a great guy, whereas that guy Alex who called in was super awkward and weird. He seems sketchy. Paul seems great. So they released Paul. Which is so fucked.
Is so classic.
So fucked. And they had his DNA now. But the thing is, there were over 130 samples of DNA.
He was like end of the line.
And they put him in the end of the line. And the testing was slow. So it's like, you had your guy. You had the evidence. But because of like the way the investigation was going, they didn't know. Like, yeah. So that fucking happened.
That sucks.
Yeah. So right after this interview, Paul drove straight to St. Catharines to visit Carla, where he assured her that he was not the Scarborough rapist. So that's what I read.
And she must, like, he's so rapey.
He's fucking rapey. He's the rapiest person ever. And there's a photo that looks like him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know if Carla believed him or not. And like, it's hard to say, like, what, even if what she said can be believed, because obviously she wants to distance herself as much as possible from him. So it's in her interest to be like, I didn't think he was doing it. So whether or not she believed it, I don't know. This was in November. And by this point, she started sending him love notes again. So back to normal in the Paul and Carla relationship. Very shortly after this, Paul decided that he should move to St. Catharines with Carla. He decided that he would move into the Homolka family home so that him and Carla could save up money before moving into their own place.
Great.
And wouldn't you know it, the rapes in Scarborough stopped after that.
Wow.
Weird.
What a weird coincidence.
So strange. So this is pretty much where I want to end today's episode, because I wanted to end this one before we got into their first murder, which is arguably a manslaughter case. Like, manslaughter is when it wasn't intentional. So it's arguably a manslaughter case. That happened right around this time in December of 1990, around Christmas. And this was like November. So it's about to happen, but I kind of wanted to end it here because
I think that's a good place to.
Yeah, this is kind of like before we get into the very significant, like, most horrific events of this case. Like, to me, the first murder is like, it's pretty much already a 10 for me. Like, just because there's a transcript of the videotape they made of it, and I read it, and all the details are in my memory forever.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so next time we'll pick up around there. But I'll leave it at here for today. Just some, light background information.
Oh, God. That was a lot, though.
It's a lot, right?
I don't even, like, he's such an awful person, like, to the core.
Just, like, no redeeming qualities.
At the very beginning, I'm, like, feeling bad for him because of his, like, home life and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's still, like, that, it's horrendous what he dealt with as a child. But, like, my God.
Yeah, it does not excuse. Like, it doesn't excuse anything. Because it's, like, obviously as a kid, you're not responsible. And you don't know, like, you don't deserve bad shit to happen to you. But at a certain point as an adult, and again, it's, like, I think we can really talk a lot about, like, the culture of masculinity, even at the time, which now is there's still, I would say, a very pervasive culture with men where it's like, just suck it up, be a man, like put some dirt on it. So as a kid, it was, I don't know.
Put some dirt on that cut, Bobby.
Yeah, so he probably, like, grew up being like, repress, and then it just, like, exploded out of him. But it does not, like, now at this point, he's, I believe, 25, 26 years old. And it's like, I think that's right. Yeah, I think somewhere around 26. And it's like, you're an adult, dude. You're accountable for your actions.
Yeah.
And you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a big old piece of shit.
And Carla, she's about 20 at this time, I believe. And still pretty young, still pretty impressionable. But it's really interesting to me that, like, despite all the glaring red flags and the, like, I mean, listen, a lot of women stay in abusive relationships. I know it's very easy to stay in one once you're in one, especially if you feel like, that's like your, like, to her, that's like all she has.
Yeah.
So for her, it's like, what does she have going for her without Paul? And then he's degraded her and made her feel so low. So now she, like, relies on him for any degree of support and self-esteem.
She probably, like, possibly believes everything that he's said about her. So she's like, well, how could I get another
right. I don't deserve better. I do deserve this. And it's like, at this point, Carla hasn't done anything. Like, to me, I don't think Carla's done anything. Although I guess her, like, I don't know, her agreeing to role play as Tammy is weird to me. I think that's very strange.
Weird.
Yeah.
It's and it's I would, like, if I was, it's alarming that she goes with it and, like, is not, warning her sister or trying to protect her sister. Right. I definitely see that. I do. But she
didn't want to warn her sister because then her sister would tell her parents, and then her fairy tale life would be shattered.
I can see how she's able to justify it, and probably, like I said earlier, just to justify and be like, Tammy would only be so lucky to have a guy like Paul be into her, kind of thing, because Paul's so great.
Right.
But that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Wow, this is really disgusting.
Yeah, and this is, like, nothing yet. Like,
I know.
Just fucking wait. It gets so much worse, and it gets so much more, like hard to comprehend and hard to understand. Like, I think on Paul's perspective, it's like it all tracks. Like, yeah, he's a fucking piece of shit person. He was a very unfortunate like victim as a child, but as an adult, he never took accountability for like his impact on other people, and he just became a monster.
Yeah.
But for Carla at this point, it's like she seems pretty fucked up because she seems pretty selfish. She seems like she like cares more about the fantasy and the facade of a perfect relationship than like the safety of her sister, which I think is very wrong. But at the same time, she's a young woman. She's probably feeling very isolated from her family, like emotionally. And I definitely at this point, to an extent, sympathize with Carla.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like later, I don't. And I think we'll see what happens. I think she's definitely
it's very clear that she has found herself in a relationship with a serial rapist.
Right.
And like all around predator.
Yep.
Who's intent on like manipulating her.
Yeah.
It would be hard for anybody to make their way out of that unscathed. Like,
which sucks. And it's like, it goes so much deeper. So I don't know when she could have got out of this relationship, because he really like captured her with all the like promises of marriage and we're gonna be this like perfect Ken and Barbie couple, and then like by the time she's like becoming aware of the red flags, she feels it's too late, which is, Paul probably learned that from his dad.
She's like, oh my God, I'm already 20 years old.
Yeah.
My life is over.
Well, yeah. I know that's the thing. It's like logically, like, girl, you could have had so many other chances, but I'm sure he convinced her into thinking he was the only. And at this point,
and he's like, you're not a virgin anymore.
Yeah,
like,
that's disgusting.
Worthless.
I need Tammy. So anyways.
Where would you be without me? Oh, God.
Yeah. I think it's really, this backstory to me is really, really interesting.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Like, obviously.
And it's cool that there's so much available.
Yeah.
It's like not always the case.
Yeah. Especially with Paul. Like with Paul, it's like, it all makes sense. And then with Carla, I feel like there are answers, but there are questions too. Like real, like, what the fuck? Like, did something happen in her childhood? Like,
very well could have been the case.
Or maybe it was just something minor, but it created like this kind of like moral vacancy that psychiatrists claim she had, or continues to have. So it is about to get a whole lot more disgusting and fucked up. So get ready for next week, everyone, because we will get into arguably the worst parts of this case next week.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the murders and basically all their crimes together. But we will leave you with that for now. In the meantime, we would love to hear your feedback. If you want to let us know your thoughts on this episode so far. Did you learn anything new about Paul or Carla or their relationship? Do you feel bad for Paul at this point? Like, not like at this point, but like, do you feel bad for like his childhood, or do you kind of think like it doesn't like
excuse
anything? It doesn't. I don't think it really excuses anything, but what do you think about that? What do you think about Carla? What do you think about the relationship?
What do you think about her wedding dress? Look it up.
No, that's for next episode.
I know, but like, look it up. It's great.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry.
Differing opinions.
Won't
on the
get
wedding
ahead.
dress. Okay, so let us know. You can reach us on Instagram at Who's Knocking Podcast, on Twitter at Who's Knocking Pod, or send us an email to hello@whosknockingpodcast.com. We would also very much appreciate it if you would follow us on iTunes or subscribe on iTunes, follow on Spotify, leave us a rating or review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now. I've heard the ratings and reviews are important, so all of our knockers, please go rate and review us.
So funny. And please subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yes,
especially
we're on YouTube.
This episode will have a lot of visuals and things,
right.
So that's where you get to really see it all as it comes. And I've been making a lot of silent faces, so if you're
that's true. You get to see our faces if you're interested in that, but also
not our feet anymore.
Yeah, Madison did unintentionally reveal her feet, and it was immediately commented on YouTube. Hello, if you're watching.
Keeping my socks on.
The toes were commented upon. So those are no longer. But yeah, we have our videos on YouTube. So we actually fully record everything. So you can see us making the podcast. And we also put in any relevant video footage, like interrogations, all that stuff. So it's a lot of extra content there. If you are only listening on iTunes or on whatever podcast audio, you're missing out. So listen on both.
Yeah, but we still appreciate you.
Yeah, either way, thank you very much for listening, for joining us on this creepy journey.
Ugh.
And stay safe out there, because you never know.
Who's knocking?
Bye.
This podcast is produced in collaboration with Lost Line Media. Artwork by August Digital. Music by Matthew Cook.